What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 704. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, you got to do the early access event for Lord of the Rings set. What's your first impression?
It's been pretty fun. There's a lot of different stuff going on that also kind of doesn't result in the most complicated of games. Mm-hmm. Like the set's not as complex as March of the Machine, but so far I have liked it. Honestly, my biggest gripe with the set is people who tell me I'm pronouncing the cards wrong because Tolkien had some weird KC switching system. And as you know from our Sylvan Caryatid and Kalitas battles, I'm not interested. No,
you plant your flag and you stick with it. I know how you roll, man.
but no, it was fun. The early access was fun. I think it was cool. They made cards like Build a Pony very good. That makes sense. And I think that the Ring Tempts You is, I'm going to give it a charitably C- D+ mechanic overall, but it plays fine. It's not like it's format ruining. Amass plays all right. There's a lot of stuff going on, and the games are not so fast that I feel like you can't take a moment to catch your breath, which I like. I think that modern Limited trends towards, if you don't have two plays by turn 3, right? Like a turn 2 play and a turn 3 play, especially on the draw. How many games feel hopeless in the last 5 sets?
Yeah, it's been really tough.
Most of them, right? Like I haven't found Lord of the Rings to be like that. I actually have found that you can not make plays and still actually be in the game. So that's a cool and welcome kind of addition to the format.
Yeah, we came away from the common and common set review both feeling, a little bit of core set vibes, and that's not a knock on it. Like, that wasn't like we hate this or something. It was just like, feels pretty stripped down, nothing too complicated going on here, pretty basic. But, thinking about it, it makes perfect sense, right? There's going to be a whole bunch of people playing this set who are like fringe Magic players or are aware of Magic but haven't really dove in, but they're big Lord of the Rings fans and they want to try it out. So you would want to set this setup to be about as welcoming as you could be to somebody who's newer to Magic, which is what core sets were designed to do as well, while still keeping, Magic's fundamentals in place. So I don't know. It might even just be a compliment to say that it has core set vibes, because that's probably what they should do for a set like this. For this episode of the show. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's been a couple of core sets I really enjoyed. I thought Magic Origins was fun. I thought M11 was fun. I thought M14 was fun.
13? Yeah. 14? Remember 14?
Yeah, 14
Divination,
was great.
Opportunity. Yeah.
Opportunity, Elixir of Immortality.
Yeah.
Core set does not mean bad.
No.
I think that it is less complex. That part is true. But I wouldn't say, just like I think balance and fun aren't as correlated as people seem to think, complexity and fun aren't either. So, I'm still very much on all right, let's see how this plays outside of things when it comes to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is that Luis and I, and probably a lot of you watching, do prefer the more complex sets because they give you a longer runway of things to explore and keep things interesting, when you hit draft 30, 40, 50, 100, whatever, like March of the Machine had that going for it. It doesn't feel like this does, but again, there's upside that you gain from doing that as well, especially if it opens the door for new players to come in, which is a really important and meaningful thing for Magic. We're going to talk about the rares and mythic rares on this show this week. So we're going to go over every single one of them, see what they did with the boosted rarity. I mean, we've seen that there's multiple versions of all the key characters that they've put out. And when they take the gloves off with the mythic rares especially, they can do some really powerful stuff, and we'll see if they did that on the show this week. Before we get into that, I did want to mention our Patreon. That's how this show is supported. We want to say thank you to everybody on the Patreon who supports us. It's what keeps the show going and what keeps the show alive. So we just wanted to say thank you. It's patreon.com/limited resources. You get a thank you card and a sticker in the mail, no matter what level you sign up for. You get access to the Patreon feed. And then as you go up the levels, you get access to some exclusive content like behind the scenes recording and stuff like that for the show. So thanks everybody on the Patreon. It really means a lot to us. Luis, we are going to give each of these cards a grade just like we did on the commons and uncommons review. And in fact, we are going to put them on the exact same grading scale that we did so that they are comparable between set reviews. Why don't you give a brief overview on said grading scale?
All right. So as always, the grades aren't the final word, but the grades give you a pretty good idea of where a card fits, especially, as you said, compared to other cards. Our grading scale uses an A through F scale with 2 subgrades. The A's, which we're going to see plenty of here, are bombs, game winners, cards that are good in many situations, especially when behind. Cards like Elish Norn or Sunfall. The B's are cards that actively pull you towards their colors. In this set, you're mostly going to be a color pair. So these are cards like the gold uncommons that pull you towards their color pair, or cards that really make you want to be in a specific color. You're really happy when you get to like third pick a B. And you usually end up with not tons of these in your deck, but if you had a good draft, you could have like 10 to 15 of them and you'd be overjoyed. Cards like Collective Nightmare, Halo Forge, just premium commons and uncommons, medium rares. C's are playable. These are the pawns of limited, as we always say. These are the cards that your deck is mostly comprised of. You have a bunch of C's in your deck. And these are cards that you're not generally happy about, but you're not unhappy about either. Cards like Meeting of the Minds or Converter Beast, the cards you need for your deck to function. D's are the cards that you don't need for your deck to function, but sometimes you got to play anyway. Cards that are kind of mediocre, junky. You feel bad when you put them in your deck. Just too expensive, too narrow, all that sort of thing. So we're talking cards like Flywheel Racer, Bonded Herd Beast. F's are cards that are unplayable in any reasonable scenario. You would basically go a whole format without putting a single one of these cards in your deck, and they're pretty obviously there. Cards that cost 10 mana, like Jin Gitaxias Core Augur, or cards that refer to Planeswalkers, cards that are just clearly not what Limited is about. We've got 2 subgrades. One is Sideboard. You're not going to find a lot of these in the rare and mythic rares, but every now and then. These are cards that you generally don't put in the main deck, but can be very powerful out of the sideboard. Cards like Destroy a Creature with Flying, Plummet, or Negate Duress. Very specific, but powerful in that specific scenario cards. And lastly, a category you will find in this review, build-around cards. Cards that on their own don't do a whole lot or maybe accomplish nothing. But if you give them the right support, can be the best card in your deck, a card that's well worth literally building around. Cards like Tribute to the World Tree.
Yeah, and these are the ones that I really love to look out for on the Rare and Mythic Rare review, so we'll keep an eye out for those. We're going to be starting things off just like we did with the Commons and Uncommons review with Red. We technically started with the gold color pair signpost, but the first color was red, and we're going to start that off here. And that gives us our first card, which is Moria Marauder. This is red for a 1/1 Goblin Warrior at rare. It's got double strike, and whenever a goblin or orc you control, so that counts this or other ones that you have, deal combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Wow. So they've really been pushing that mechanic for red, Yeah, if this connects, it really does good work. I mean, it's not until end of the next turn, like some of these cards, and that's actually like a minor quibble I have with this red effect is like you have to read them very carefully. Some are this turn, some are next turn, some let you play lands, some don't, whatever. This is this turn, and you can play lands. And yes, lands. So the main combo with Moria Marauder is Tempted by the Ring. If you choose this as your ring bearer, they have to block it with a 1-power creature, which in a lot of cases is a 1/1. So this has double strike. It'll beat it. But like I found out actually literally earlier today, they just play this, made it the ring bearer. I didn't have any 1-power creatures. Every turn they had access to 3 cards. It's like they were drawing 1.5 to 2 extra cards a turn. They didn't always play both cards off it, but it didn't take very many turns for me to just get buried. And they're not missing any land drops, that's for sure. Definitely not. So yeah, wow, that's a nice little card. Now, of course, the tough part about it is that it does cost double red. So, you do have to be skewed towards red enough to try to get this down on turn 2, right? Yeah, but also this kind of has haste because it counts your other goblins or orcs. Yeah. And it's per goblin or orc. So if you play this when you have an army and like another orc in play and you hit them, I mean, really? So I would give Moria Marauder a B+, and honestly, I don't think it would be crazy to call this card an A- in the right deck. I wouldn't first pick it over, an A-level card, but
if you're like black-red and you see this in pack 3, you're probably very, very happy to take it.
Yeah, I like B+ for Moria Marauder. Next is Spiteful Banditry, which is just an awesome name. This one's a mythic rare. It's red X for an enchantment. Kind of weird casting cost for an enchantment, but it says when it enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to each creature. And then it says whenever one or more creatures your opponents control die, you create a treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn.
It's the Red Meat Hook Massacre. It's a scaling wrath that makes a treasure when you play it, certainly. And then from then on, whenever one of their creatures dies, you get a treasure. Again, it's one per turn, but that's not a big drawback. It's just a great card. Like you can play this and just kill everything. You play it X equals 4 or 5, right? Everything dies. Or you play it like X equals 2 and you have a 3/3 in play and they have 3/2 toughness creatures. I mean, this is an A. This is just good in so many different situations, especially when behind. But it's the kind of card, and this is why Meat Hook Massacre was so good. It also can be good when you're ahead or when you're at parity. You just get to decide how big this is going to be. And then giving you treasures is just a nice little bonus that kind of makes it easier for you to cast spells the rest of the game.
Can you, do you see a world where you set this up as well? Meaning like you attack with a thing, they block, and then, now you can clear off the rest of the board because their blocker took damage. Maybe that was their 4/5 and you can only fire off your banditry for 3 or whatever, but now it kills that plus everything else, that type of scenario.
Totally. Imagine a board where, they have 4/4s and you have a 4/4 and you have a 2/2 that's maybe tempted by the ring or something. Mm-hmm. They block with their like 2/4 and you're just going to play this for 2 and kill their thing, but not yours. I mean, there's a lot that you could potentially be doing here.
So, and you're good with giving up efficiency for flexibility here, right? Because this is a little bit inefficient, right? Like, there are times when you want to try to blow up the whole board and it's going to cost you a heck of a lot of mana to accomplish that.
I don't even know that I'd call this inefficient because it kills so many things. Like, yes, sometimes you're paying 6 mana for it, but if you kill 4 of their creatures, then you still got a mana advantage, right?
That's true. So, okay, but you like A for Spiteful Banditry.
I think it's an A. Yeah. I don't think you can really justify anything else.
It's nasty. And then there is also just the weird scenario where you just play it out for red and just like if their guys start dying, then you start getting treasure tokens, right? Like if you're so far ahead that you can't see yourself doing it.
I don't think you're ever going to do that.
You just want to
it would be a really weird game for you to do that.
Because you'd prefer to have the backup plan in case things go awry.
Yeah, I mean, not an impossible way to have that happen, but like it's such a powerful card. I can't really imagine giving up that power level,
Yeah, true. Speaking of, Display of Power is 1 red for an instant at rare. This spell can't be copied. Is that supposed to say countered?
No.
Copy any number of target instant and or sorcery spells. You may choose new targets for the copies. No.
I mean,
that's a huge premium to pay 3 mana.
3 mana is a lot. For this to be good, you'd have to have 2 spells on the stack. For that to happen, the best case scenario is you're casting Birthday Escape for 1 mana, responding with a Smite the Deathless for 2 mana, and then casting Display of Power. In which case, you spent 3 mana to deal 3 damage, draw a card, and get tempted, right? That's good. But how often is that going to happen when you have all these cards in your deck? So
and the color has to line up, and
F on Display of Power. I mean, if you want to, don't let your memes be dreams. If you wanted to do this, be aware it's not a good thing to do, but it is funny.
Next is Fall of Care Andros. Or did we get an email about that I was supposed to say this some other way, or is it actually Care? Did I stick the landing?
I don't know or care. No, I believe it is that C's and K's are kind of switched. So this is Care Andros, but
okay.
Other is Celeborn or something. I don't know. Celeborn.
Yeah. All right. Fall of Care Andros is 2 and a red for an enchantment at rare. And it says whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, amass Orcs X, where X is the excess damage. So already I'm that's cool, but like no way. And then it has an activated ability, 7 and a red. Fall of Care Andros deals 7 damage to target creature. So it does give you a repeat shot if you can get up to 8 mana, way to take advantage. I mean, I guess you just completely take over the board if you get to 8 mana.
if you activate this once, you kill their like 3/3 and put a 4/4 into play.
Yeah.
They can't kill you. Then every turn you're killing a creature and making your army bigger. So the question is, can you afford to play a 3-mana enchantment that does basically nothing until then, barring
maybe one burn spell fires?
Yeah,
right?
maybe you do one of those. This feels like a build around. No, this feels like a build around B, not because it needs other cards to function on its face. Obviously, this can do the whole thing by itself. More because you need to have a deck that lets you basically be down a card until 8 mana, which there are decks that can do that. I've had a lot of blue-red decks so far. I've had like 3, and I think I would play this card in most of those decks. So I would say build around B.
Would you be ramping? Or are you just content to say, I'm going to draw about half the lands in my deck before I can start firing off my Fall of Caradhras?
I haven't found ramp to be that effective of a strategy. It kind of feels like you end up flooding a lot when you just go too hard on ramp.
Isn't it? Man, because even like it's interesting because even though the dream is to get to repeated activations, even just getting to one, like you said, will probably stabilize you and give you the chance to buy you more time. So, almost feels like having a treasure token, something just to get me a one shot to get this thing active just the one time to take out their biggest thing and get me something on board would lead me to a win. I like build around B for Fall of Caradhras as well. I like that it turns the game into this, that it's like, okay, survive until I get to 8. And, this is a red card, the burn spell color. So you may very well have 1 or 2 spells that actually could net you an additional army token or something like that, just for having this on board. If I open that, I'm snapping it off and seeing if I can make it work. Next is Gloin Dwarf Emissary, and this is 2 and a red for a 3/3 legendary dwarf advisor at rare. Whenever you cast a historic spell, create, a treasure token. There's my treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn, and just as a reminder, artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic. And then you can tap Gloin and sacrifice a treasure to goad target creature. And it says, until your next turn, that creature attacks each combat if able and attacks a player other than you if able, which of course doesn't apply to us. It will be attacking you.
Right.
So you can throw treasures at their guys to make them attack. It's a 3/3 for 3. And whenever you cast a historic spell, which there's a decent number, you have tons of legendaries in the set and everything, you'll net yourself a treasure as well. What's not to love?
I don't think the goad ability is particularly good. That traditionally is just not a very effective way to go about things. But if I gave it to you
for
basically free, I mean,
free-ish.
So one thing is there's a lot of legends in this set because of Tempted by the Ring, but actually triggering this is going to happen a little bit less likely. There are plenty of legendary creatures that will, but it's not like I've had decks where it's like I have 7 legendary creatures, but I can make 12 legends because I have 5 Tempted by the Ring cards. So you do have to kind of keep in mind that it's not going to be quite that easy,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I still like B, I guess, for Gloin, maybe B-. Like, I'd probably just go B for Gloin Dwarf Emissary. That ability will pop up every once in a while. You will sometimes get a random treasure, and you're getting a 3/3 for 3, that isn't the end of the world as it sits. So I would say B for Gloin. Where are you at?
I think it's probably a B-, but it's fine.
Okay. Éomer,
I think.
Yeah, Éomer, Marshal of Rohan. This is 2 red for a 4/4 legendary human knight at rare with haste. And so 4 mana 4/4 haste. That hits hard, right? Like that's a toughie. And then it says whenever one or more other attacking legendary creatures you control die, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. This ability triggers only once each turn. So if one of your other attacking legends dies in combat, you get it?
You get an extra attack.
Dang.
Extra attacks are also typically not that powerful.
Right, because it's hard. The hard part is getting to the point where you have a good attack, right?
Yeah. So having something die and then also having enough left over to make a good attack is, not the easiest, but That said, I mean, a 4-mana 4/4 haste, I don't really need much extra text to feel like I'm getting paid off there.
Definitely. I would give Éomer a B.
I think Éomer gets a B+ from me, just because. Also, Legend is generally upside. There are a couple of cards that prey on Legends, but generally Legend is upside. And I think, you could also do some cool stuff with this. Like you've got a Ring Bearer that you sacrifice mid-combat to get an extra attack out of nowhere, that sort of thing.
Is it Éomer or Marshall? Like, make up your mind, right? Marshall of Rohan, Éomer. Hugh the Entwood. Oh, this is going to be nasty. Three red for a sorcery. This one's mythic. It says sacrifice any number of lands. Reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of lands sacrificed this way. Choose any number of artifact and or land cards revealed this way. Put all non-land cards chosen this way onto the battlefield. Then put all land cards chosen this way onto the battlefield tapped. Then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Wow, that was a really long way to just say F.
Yeah, this effectively you cast this, sack all your lands, and then draw less lands. Right. You turn your 7 lands into 3 lands, and that's it. Yeah. So, yeah,
good flavor. F for us though.
Yeah, don't play Hugh the Entwood. Also, it's got some interesting constructed stuff. It doesn't have casting cost. You can just put a bunch of Blightsteel Colossus into play or whatever.
yeah, there's some cool stuff there. There and back again. I did not assume this would be a red card with that name, but here it is. This is our last red card here.
That's the name of the Hobbit. That's the name of Bilbo's tale.
Yeah, his book, right? Yeah. 3 red for a saga. This one's rare. And chapter 1 of this saga is up to 1 target creature can't block for as long as you control there and back again. The ring tempts you. Chapter 2 is search your library for a mountain card, put it on the battlefield, just straight up, and then shuffle. And then chapter 3 is, here we go. Create Smaug, a legendary 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying, haste, and when this creature dies, create 14 treasure tokens. Oh, that's incredible. So for 5 mana, you get actually pretty minimal, right? You get a ring tempt and something can't block for the turn, which is like meh. But then you get a mountain, which is okay. And then you just get this awesome dragon. So the real payoff is to get to chapter 3 here.
Yeah, and I mean, the dragon is awesome. 6/6 haste, and then also when it dies, getting 14 treasures. That's just ludicrous, of course.
Right. It's weird because when I think of this, I think, okay, I want to get to chapter 3, so I need to stay alive. And then I look at the first chapter and it has nothing to do with staying alive, right? It has everything to do with attacking. Like it tempts you get ring tempted, which encourages you to attack, and it makes something can't block, which encourages you to attack. And then chapter 2, nice to get a mountain, but it's kind of a blank as far as like board presence goes, right? It's not helping you stay alive. It's not helping you attack. And then all of a sudden you're like, boom, I get a big fat dragon. That's awesome. So the question is, what kind of a deck ideally is this suited for? An aggressive deck or a more controlling deck? Or is it just you throw it in and take what you get?
I mean, ideally aggressive, but just this card's so strong that it's good. You would never not play it.
Yeah, I would always play it. Definitely. It just feels a little bit conflicted about the chapters. Right. Like my goals are not aligned with what it does, but it's still just too good to pass for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an A-. Like there will be games where you can't cast this on turn 5, and any turn where you can't cast this really pushes it out kind of multiple turns. Cause once you already can't cast this, generally the game doesn't get that much more hospitable to casting it.
Right.
But if you can ever cast this at parity or when you're on the front foot, like, imagine you have a creature in play, they play a creature intending to block, and you go there and back again, you can't block, attack you. Now they have to attack back. You put a mountain directly into play, so it's kind of a ramp card. Mm-hmm. And then you play something else that turn, and then they know next turn you got a 6/6 haster coming. Like that seems pretty good. And then obviously if you have a sack outlet so that they can't bounce Smaug, then you're really in it, because like casting Nasty and sacking Smaug to draw 3 cards and putting 14 tokens into play, you just get to cast all those
just
cards.
Play all those cards right away.
Right.
Yeah. This card's just sweet too.
It is.
Yeah, I like A minus. Like this doesn't to me quite get to the A range because of its inability. Like if you're behind it, it actually is just a bit too slow. But the power level's there, the card advantage is there, so it definitely earns its A. Okay, that's it for the red cards. Let us move to green. Our first one is called Delighted Halfling. This is green for a 1/2 Halfling citizen at rare. It taps to add colorless. Good enough. And it taps to add 1 mana of any color, but you can spend this mana only to cast a legendary spell and a little bonus, but there's some counters here. The spell can't be countered. Nice little... I was going to call it a mana elf, but I guess it's a mana hobbit.
Halfling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, every time that my opponent has cast this, I felt like I'm behind because you played on turn 1, you just play a 3-drop on turn 2.
Yeah.
1 mana dorks are really strong. I think that you can just straight up give this probably a B plus. It's not quite like a bomb, but it is quite good.
Yeah, I'd give it a B. I mean, it's a B plus when you play it on turn 1, but there are the times when you draw it later and it's less impactful. But still, it's well worth it to put these type of cards in your deck.
There's a lot of sacrifice stuff, and then in this set, and then ring bearers, like 1-power creatures are pretty good ring bearers. I would give this a B plus. I found it to be pretty effective.
A 1/2 also. I mean, that's a nice ring bearer stat line. Next is Fall of Gil-galad. This is 1 and a green for a saga at rare. Chapter 1 is Scry 2. And we've seen that, there's a mechanic that, uses Scry 2, and also Scry 2 is just good. So not bad.
The blue-green Scry deck has been pretty strong when I faced it.
Okay. So this is a good card for that. Chapter 2 is put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. That's strong as well. And chapter 3 is until end of turn, target creature you control gains. When this creature dies, draw 2 cards. Then that creature fights up to 1 other target creature. So tricky. Because if you can engineer a trade, you're kind of maxing out on value.
Yeah, what you really want to do with this is to have 1 creature exactly trade, like a 3/3 fight their 3/3. It's actually better than your 4/4 fighting their 3/3 because most creatures you trade for 2 cards. But
a Death Toucher.
There's just no way for this card. Death Toucher is actually the best. But totally, like the 1/1 spider, just take out their 5/5, draw 2. But there's no way this card goes wrong. Like if you have literally no creatures in play for chapter 2 and 3, yes, the card doesn't do much. Mm-hmm. Every other scenario, I mean, getting 2 +1/+1 counters and a fight spell is quite good. Getting a Scry 2 on top of that, even better. And if you can maneuver this to be a draw 2, like we're well above what 2 mana should get you here.
Totally. This card is punching way above its weight. I think the only interesting or the catch with it is it definitely not an automatic turn 2 play, right? Like if you have a 2-drop creature, you might be better off just playing that and then playing Fall the next turn, right?
Absolutely should not play this turn 2.
Yeah, unless you had a 1-drop, right? Yes. Then maybe you could engineer it. But even then, you're getting a ton for your mana, but that is realized by double spelling with Fall of Gil-galad, not necessarily just playing it on 2. I could see playing it on 2 if you were going to miss land drops and you were just screwed otherwise. So you needed the Scry, but you're punting a lot of the value away if you do it that way.
Totally.
I like B plus. You give it an A.
This is an A. Think of the game where you both play some creatures, then on like turn 5, they play a 3-drop and then play this to Scry 2.
It's nasty.
You're not going to feel like you're winning that game.
Not at all. I'll go A minus.
Sure.
Next is Legolas Master Archer. So as we've seen, there's multiple versions. We saw uncommon versions of these key characters, and this is a rare. This one's 1 green for a legendary elf archer. It's a 1/4 with reach, and whenever you cast a spell that targets Legolas, put a +1/+1 counter on Legolas, so that's already sweet. And then whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you don't control, Legolas deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 target creature. It can be any, so it doesn't have to even be that one that you targeted.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool card.
So the question that I have is in the middle section there. Whenever you cast a spell that targets it, what am I doing there? Am I doing that often?
So what you're trying to do with this, honestly, is cast End's Fury or any of the fight spells. because then Legolas gets a counter and then shoots one of their creatures, and then the fight resolves and then fights something else.
Okay, so this isn't as much about like I'm going to draft a bunch of combat tricks. It's using the removal spells in green that we would be using anyway, but now we're just turbocharging them.
Yeah, I mean, combat tricks do work well with Legolas. I don't think I'd mind playing those, but overall, I think Legolas is just a good card on rate. It doesn't ask you to do too much, and really especially good if you can target their stuff. Though the funny part about Legolas is he kind of needs a little help to get started because he only does one.
Yeah.
So you want a mix of cards that target him and target other things.
Yeah. The fight spell thing just seems amazing though. I think being like that's incredible.
I think that's going to be really good. Also, just cantrip cards like you cast Hithlane Knots, right? The tap scry one, just casting it on Legolas and get a counter, or casting it on their creature and have Legolas fight a creature.
Yeah,
like it's just good either way, So,
totally. Yeah, and I think that the key with Legolas is to get him up to 2, right? Like that is such a huge difference between 1 and 2. 2 starts to kill a lot of 2 and 3 mana creatures, where 1 power will usually not. It'll kill like a subsection of 1 and 2 drops. B for Legolas?
Yeah, I think B is about right. Like Legolas is there. I mean, I've played against this card a little bit, and there's games where like they just put this card into play and it doesn't trigger. Like you do have to have specific things in order for it to trigger,
So a slight build around element there too. Elven Chorus is next. This is 3 and a green for an enchantment at rare. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library, and creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Wow, you could really get turboing with this thing.
Yeah, in a heavy creature deck, this card is very effective. It's an Oracle of Moldiah, but also your creatures are all mana dorks, so you get a chance to really just like go off there. Yeah,
especially if you're heavy creature based, which most limited, especially green limited decks are, but especially if you built around it a little bit and got yourself up into that like 17, 18 creature range where you could really pop off with this if you hit a nice run of cards.
I think this is a bit of a build around because like you said, you want, I think 17, 18, maybe more creatures if you could. Like you want this to be one of your 4 or 5 non-creature spells.
Right.
Exactly. If it is, you're spending 4 mana. So I guess compared to a card draw spell, if you cast 3 creatures off this, you'll feel pretty good about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it costs 4 mana that doesn't do anything besides that, except for the fact that it also makes all your creatures mana dorks. So now you're in a spot where you're able to play the chorus and the creatures fuel themselves. So this starts to be like a 2 mana draw spell, 1 mana draw spell once you've tapped your creatures a few times. Yeah. And then it also snowballs where once you've played 2 creatures, now you have access to more mana. This is the kind of card where if you're playing a kind of controlling deck and your opponent casts this, you feel, well, I'm going to lose this game.
Yeah,
exactly. I have to close this out quickly.
Definitely.
So there's a lot of cards in this deck that actually punish the long game decks, which I don't think is a bad thing. So, and the Elven Chorus is most certainly one of them.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I like B for Elven Chorus. There's also just like, you might just use the mana to cast, we've got a 7-drop and an 8-drop coming up just in green here, right? You might just play this thing on turn 4 and then get to your next turn and then just be like tap for 7 mana and play something huge just because of that last static ability.
Yeah, it's true. You can use the mana for whatever you want.
Now, this, just to be clear though, this does give the creature the ability, so Summoning Sickness will play in here, right?
Yeah, you can't go off where you play a creature off top and then you tap it and all that. That's just how they template cards these days, which also makes way more sense.
So what do you like? Do you like B for Elven Chorus?
Yeah, B is exactly what I was thinking.
Radagast the Brown is next. This is 2 green for a 2/5 legendary avatar wizard at Mythic rare. And boy, they used up that text box. It says, whenever Radagast the Brown or another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top X cards of your library where X is that creature's mana value. You may reveal a creature card that doesn't share a creature type with the creature you control from among those cards and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So you get a 4-mana 2/5 that when it ETBs or another actual creature does, non-token, this thing triggers every time off of the mana value. So you get this trigger for 4 just straight up.
Yeah. You play this, you get a trigger for 4, and then as long as you keep finding creatures that don't share types with what you've got, then you can keep drawing cards. Pretty
And
good
just
in a creature
chain.
heavy deck as well. This is a lot like Elven Chorus. It is bad with multi-type creatures. So
Right.
when you have creatures that have multiple types, it actually does punish you there. But overall, a pretty strong card. I mean, it's pretty close to a 4-mana 2/5 draw card, and then potentially draw a card every turn from there on, or half the turns or something.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, going back to its creature type, it's an avatar wizard, which
Very few of either.
yeah,
of
those are not very well represented. But there's a ton of elves, there's stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a good chance that you hit off of your first Radagast trigger, and then even if you only get another card, you're already really happy. I also like that this one's actually quite a good blocker. We were talking about Elven Chorus, which does a better job of powering you through to the late game. It sort of doesn't have a limit on how much value it can get you, where Radagast probably does at some point. But this is a 4-mana 2/5. Like, if you were behind a little bit, you're going to be really happy to have a 2/5 blocker rather than an enchantment that doesn't affect combat at all. So upsides and downsides for Radagast, comparing it to a similar card. I love it. I mean, this card just seems great to me. Not a lot to complain about. Its defensive stats match up with its desire to have the game go longer, where you can keep casting creatures and getting triggers off of it. And I like that it's aligned in that way too. B+ for Radagast the Brown. Is it an A-?
I think it's an A-. Like,
Sure.
Look, you cast this on turn 4. It's going to be bigger than comparable or bigger than anything on the board. It probably draws you a card, creature out of your top 4. And then if they don't kill it, you just draw another card next turn. Imagine you just play one of the land cyclers with this.
No, you're right. Also, it's not just a card. It's a creature. Like, you're drawing like relevant spells, not just like, flooding out or whatever. A- for Radagast the Brown. Next is The Ring Goes South. This is 3 and a green for a sorcery. It's rare. It says the ring tempts you. Then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X land cards, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. Put those land cards onto the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So 4 mana, you get a ring tempt. And you get a legendary creature spotted to you from the ring thing.
Yeah.
And then maybe you have an extra one or something.
Yeah, you get to you get to cast. You get to, if you have a second creature, this turns into tempt plus two lands.
Yeah, and you're getting 1 land every time, basically.
As long as you have a creature in play, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very strange ring tempt plus ramp for 4.
Yeah. I don't think that when you have 2 legendary creatures in play, ramping you is going to be like that exciting.
No. What percentage of a card is a ring tempt?
It's kind of hard to say. Way less than a card.
It's like a quarter of a card or something.
Like, there's some times when it's really good, getting from like the 3rd to the 4th or the 1st to the 2nd. But there's a lot of times when it's just not,
Yeah, so, this just seems mana inefficient to me. I guess if I had a strong reason to want to ramp, maybe. But like, I don't know. If you told me 4 mana rampant growth ring tempt, I'd be like, nah, that's a lot of mana.
Yeah.
So Ring Goes South to me, it looks like a D. Like, I don't know. Maybe I could come up with a few decks that would appreciate this type of thing, or that could really take advantage by getting 3 or 4 lands and doing something stupid. But just on its surface, it just seems too inefficient.
Yeah, I think so.
What about Fangorn Tree Shepherd?
This is 4 green, so 7 mana.
7 ball.
For a legendary Treefolk at rare. It's a 4/10. Your Treefolk have vigilance. Whenever 1 or more Treefolk you control attack, add twice that much green, and you don't lose unspent green mana as phases end. So
just the classic, I've gotten to 7 mana, now you're going to give me more.
Yeah, this looks like pretty close to an F. Like, you're just not going to play a 7 mana 4/10 with a bunch of mediocre abilities.
No.
I just don't think that's going to be good.
No. They could have done better with it, but maybe this is just like a pure flavor win. Last one is called Last March of the Ents, which was a big deal. 6 green for a sorcery at Mythic that cannot be countered. All right, set me up. Let's hit this thing out of the park. Draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. Then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. That's sweet.
Yeah, so you end up drawing like 5 cards a lot of the time or something.
4 cards. Yeah.
And then put all your creatures into play, but at 8 mana, you kind of could put all your creatures into play anyway, so.
But you didn't have them. Oh, boy. Man, this would definitely tip the scales, right? Like if this is a parody, just game breaker, right? You're like staring at each other and then somebody goes Last March of the Ents and it's just kind of over.
Yeah.
But it's so expensive at 8 mana. And you have to have, 3 is kind of the minimum, right? A 3 toughness creature.
Yeah, but even then, like you're drawing 3 cards, sure, and putting a creature or 2 into play.
Yeah, I'm saying 2 would be like a disaster.
This honestly feels like a sideboard card to me when you're in a matchup where you both have lots of big creatures and neither can kill them very well.
Yeah.
I don't really think you can just put this card in your deck and expect it to work. It doesn't feel like it's going to work very well.
Definitely not. I like the sideboard grade. I would bring that. There's definitely matchups where this will be the one card that breaks open the entire matchup. But if you're facing somebody who's playing a 1-drop in their deck that can attack you, and you look down at Last March of the Ents in your opening hand, you are going to be real sad. You're going to die.
Also, yeah, the spell can't be countered, but imagine casting this and they just bounce your biggest creature.
Oh my God. Right. And that's what I mean. Like they bounce your 5 toughness creature and leave you with a 2 toughness. Like you're just literally crying on the battlefield. So we'll give it a sideboard grade, but that's being generous. I do not think that you can put this into your deck and expect to do well against a multitude of matchups.
Yeah.
It's a sweet one though. Okay, that'll bring us to white, where our first card is Frodo, Sauron's Bane. So this is it. This is the rare Frodo. White for a 1/2 legendary halfling citizen. That 1/2, by the way, that ring bearer stat line, right? Really nice. Frodo has 2 activated abilities. The first one is either black, white, or white, black. You can choose. And it says, if Frodo, Sauron's Bane, is a citizen, it becomes a halfling scout with base power and toughness 2/3 and lifelink. So this is Frodo leaving the Shire and venturing out. And then if the other activated ability is black. And it says if Frodo is a scout, it becomes a halfling rogue with, quote, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game if the ring has tempted you 4 or more times this game. Otherwise, the ring tempts you. Okay, explain what does that mean?
So you play this, you make it a 2/3 lifelink, and then once you've done that, if you play triple black, now every time Frodo hits them, either you get tempted, or
I get tempted, or they get tempted.
You get tempted.
Okay.
Or they lose the game if you've already tempted 4 times.
Okay.
So I think mostly what this card is a white creature that is 1 mana for a 1/2 that you can pay double white to upgrade to a 2/3 lifelink. The triple black part, I don't feel like has a huge impact on the game. Like,
just because it's like, unless you're white black, you can't do it.
Yeah. First of all, unless you're white black, you can't do it. Second of all, this has to hit them as a 2/3, which is not going to be the easiest thing in the world. You know?
Right. It's almost like a drawback to have a 2/3 over a 1/2 if your only goal is to get
it would actually be better if it was just a 1/2 for that purposes.
Right.
For those purposes.
So let's assume that you're not in black and you're in white and some other
how
color.
good's the first part?
Yeah.
Well,
it's fine.
If you're white X that's not black, then yeah, it's going to be fine. I mean, it's a little mana intensive in order to do it, but it's it's doable. If you're white black specifically, then it's really easy to turn it into the 2/3 version, and that is pretty strong. Like you're gonna be happy when you do that. I mean, I would play 1 mana 1/2 that turns into a 2/3 lifelink in every white black deck. I would be a little less inclined to play it in like a white green deck if that deck didn't have a good amount of fixing. But
really, just to get to second white, you already have one.
The problem is if you can't activate it, it's pretty weak.
It's pretty bad.
So I
don't know. I think if I told you, hey, look, here's an uncommon. It's white for a 1/2, and you can pay white to turn it into a 2/3 lifelink. We'd be like, yeah, okay, like I'll pay that.
Yeah, but
not excited, but
yeah, I guess that's reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I would have that at like a C+. And then if you add in the black, turn this into a
not
mini
irrelevant.
Game, then I'd probably go B- on Frodo. But I mean, really, what we're saying is C+ if you can't activate the triple black, and B or whatever if you can. Like, it gives you something to do in the late game. It makes it a more relevant card. It turns it into kind of a mini game.
Yeah.
It felt, I mean, look, the truth is they leaned hard on the lore, like telling the story with these abilities, but the way that they actually play out, they're like made it triple black because he's like, into Mordor now or whatever. It's cool, but like this card is a little disjointed as far as how it actually plays out.
Yeah. I think this card's a little bit more flavor over function.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And I think that overall Frodo's like a C. It's just a playable,
It's a fine card, yeah.
Playable white card.
There you go. Next is Dawn of a New Age. This is a 1 and a white for an enchantment at Mythic. And it says Dawn of a New Age enters the battlefield with a hope counter on it for each creature you control. At the beginning of your end step, remove a hope counter from Dawn of the New Age. If you do, draw a card. Then Dawn of the New Age if Dawn of the New Age has no hope counters on it, sacrifice it, and you gain 4 life. And you get the card close to right away. You get one on your end step.
Yeah, so you're not going to be able to like play a card the same turn, but you are going to get to draw a card that turn, setting up for next turn.
Yeah, or if you draw an instant and have the mana, you could cast it. I mean, if I had 2 creatures and I played Dawn of a New Age, got 2 counters on it, got a card back right away. On my turn, I have
life the next turn,
and then the next turn I get the card too, right?
Yeah, so
I
get a card for each creature
4
and
life.
4 life.
That's only on 2. Like, that's actually pretty good for my 2 mana.
I mean, play a 2-drop, play a 3-drop, turn 4, play a 2-drop, cast this, draw 3, gain 4 over the next couple turns.
Yeah,
pretty good.
Get one for next turn. Yeah, I'm kind of sold. Also, it's in white, which is typically a color that likes to have a lot of creatures on the battlefield. And I mean, dude, if I drew this and turn 7 or something, and we had a little bit of a standoff where we each had 3 or 4 creatures, I draw 4 off of this over the next. Like, how am I losing that game?
Yeah, I think you're not very likely to.
I kind of like this card.
I think Dawn of a New Age is quite good. Like, don't look at this as like a draw 5 because that's not going to happen very often. But I think a good way to look at this. Yeah, I think a good way to look at this is the floor of having 1 creature in play and basically cycling this and gaining 4 life is pretty high, and it's not crazy to think that could happen. And whenever you get 2 or 3 cards in the first, you cast this in the first 7 turns, I think you're gonna feel like this card is just a great bargain.
Definitely.
High floor, high ceiling is the way you want your card. So I like Dawn of a New Age. I don't think it's a bomb, but I think it's quite good.
Like a B+.
Yeah, I would give it a B+.
I do have one question though, because I can't figure it out from reading the rules text, which is, if I have no creatures, do I get the life?
If you cast this,
it says at the beginning of your end step, remove a hope counter from it. If you do draw a card, then if Dawn of a New Age has no hope counters on it. Sack it and you gain 4 life. Does the then follow me having removed a hope counter, or does that happen regardless?
It'll happen regardless, looking at this card.
Okay. So, yeah, I like B at least for Dawn of a New Age. The efficiency is really there. That's a great card draw spell for white. Really good. Yeah. Next is Flowering of the White Tree. This is white for a legendary enchantment. It's rare. It says legendary creatures you control get +2/+1 and have ward 1. Non-legendary creatures you control get +1/+1. Dang.
So, white, all your creatures are +1/+1 is a card I would just put into almost every white deck.
Yeah, Crusade.
Yeah. And then when the fact that your legendary creatures get this additional bonus, I mean, that is awesome.
And yeah, and of course the ring bearers get that. Yeah, that seems great. I like B+ for Flowering of the White Tree.
I would give this an A-. I mean,
just because it's so cheap.
Glorious Anthem is such a good card.
It is, and this is better, a lot better. All right, next is Boromir, Warden of the Tower. This is 2 and a white for a 3/3 legendary human soldier at rare. Boromir has Vigilance, and whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. Okay. And then it says sacrifice Boromir, and creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn, and the ring tempts you. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already in for a 3-mana 3/3 Vigilance. Getting to sack it to save your whole board plus tempt you if you need to. Like, you can imagine a combat where you like sack this, you have an unblocked creature, you turn it into the ring bearer and kill them because you're at level 4.
Right.
The your opponent cast a spell if no mana was spent thing doesn't really come up. I guess it counters the copy all spells. No, that isn't even cast, so it's just I don't even know what's up with that. But
this is, if they put this in cube, we're going to be annoyed by it, but I don't think it'll do anything there. But yeah, this is a 3/3 for 3 with Vigilance and a relevant sack ability. Look, this isn't mind-blowing stuff, but I mean, this is a good card. Like, definitely would take this highly in any white deck. The question is, like, is it in the B+ or the A- range? I would give it a B+.
Yeah, I think B+ is good for Boromir.
You know, it's a card that makes you want to play white that's just solid and you're happy to have in your deck, but it's not like some bomby game changer.
Yeah.
Next is Forge Anew. This is 2 and a white for an enchantment at rare. It says when Forge Anew enters the battlefield, return target equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's like, why? Once I hear this, I'm just off it. I feel that way too. As long as it's your turn, you may activate equip abilities anytime you could cast an instant. You may pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost of the first equip ability. Yeah, F for Forge Anew. Next is the Battle of Bywater. This is 1 white for a sorcery at rare. Destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater, then create a food token for each creature you control. So this is like the Hobbit Wrath?
Yeah, they're driving out all of the orcs and Saruman stuff.
This is cool.
Very good card, because this is, again, a kind of situational wrath. You have a little less control over this than you do something like Spiteful Banditry, right? But you still know this is coming, so you like don't play your 3-power creature. You don't even necessarily throw off the alarm bells that you might think when like you're setting up a wrath a lot of the time, right? Your opponent can kind of be like, what are you doing over there? Why aren't you playing creatures? I'm going to be suspicious.
Right.
You could easily play Battle of Bywater in a game where it looks like you're curving out.
Totally. And also, like, this is a perfect example of a card where, like, yeah, obviously when you read this, you think like, oh, I'm going to sweep their whole board and I'm going to hit them with all this stuff and I'm going to get all this food. You can use this to kill one thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just like sometimes you go 1-drop, 2-drop, and they're on the play and they play a 3/3 for 3 and you just go Battle of Bywater. Kill your 3/3, give me a food, attack you, go. Like, that's fine. Like, this thing doesn't have to be some one-sided mega bomb wrath. Sometimes it just kills 1 or 2 things, or it kills a really annoying thing on their side and sure, one of yours, but you get a food token or something like that. What grade would you give it? It's a little tricky to grade cards like this.
I mean, you can pretty easily get like 5 food tokens here.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's for each of your creatures.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I think this is, I would say A-. Like this is not going to be hard to be like you said, 3 mana, kill their creature, put 1 or 2 food into play. And the high end of this is kill their 2 or 3 creatures, none of yours, put 4 food into play.
Mm-hmm.
I think B plus A-. Like there's going to be matchups where this isn't the best, but I mean, you play against blue-green Sky and they start loading +1/+1 counters on their things. You play against an Orc army deck and you're like, kill your Orc army plus maybe one of your other things. You know, it's going to be really bad against the blue-red spells deck that has no creatures. Sure.
Yeah. Yep.
The white-green mirror, there's still random 4/4s running around, and again, you get to kind of set this up in a way that your opponent's not aware of.
Is there a world where you just make it into a food fest? When he doesn't kill anything, but you're just like, I want 5 foods, because there is a deck that cares about that, right? Or tokens or something.
Yeah, I think that's not a completely unreasonable.
You know, like you said, against like red, blue, it's not literally blank. Like you can just cast it and get food for each creature, which I don't know if that does anything, but.
Yeah. I mean, how much would you pay to make like 5 food or 4 food?
I mean, for 3 mana, that's worth it. I mean, again, you need something to do with them, but yeah.
But imagine you have some Mushroom Watchdogs in play.
Right.
Also, there's some weird stuff going on here where you can like cast a pump spell on their creature sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's obviously not going to come up like tons, but yeah, I like
so you like
A-
for Battle of Bywater?
I think that this is going to be one of the better cards in enough matchups. That
what's the downside to it? Because we've listed all of this upside. What's the crappy case scenario?
The crappy case is you play against someone who is either light on creatures or light on big creatures. You play against blue-red, right? You play against a white-green deck that is kind of small creatures and are like trying to tempt by the ring with their Frodos and stuff like that. And they don't have like 3/3s. But killing 1 creature and making a food or 2 is a really good card for 3 mana. And this, I think, has a lot of room above that.
And last question, if you were green-white, would you play this? Because I'm assuming that you're going to have a bunch of 3-powered creatures.
Yeah, you just have to set it up right.
Okay.
Also, losing one of your own creatures is not the end of the world.
No, it's sometimes the right thing to do. Yeah, I like B+ for Battle of Bywater. There is some setup cost and some finickiness here that keeps it out of A range for me, but it's right up there.
Yeah.
And the upside, I mean, we haven't even talked about the one where you just like blow their whole board, right? War of the Last Alliance is next. It's 3 and a white for Saga at rare. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 are the same. They say search your library for a legendary creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. Okay. And then Chapter 3 is creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn, and the ring tempts you. Wow. So you know, this is slow, right? 4 mana doesn't do anything. But you get to dig up straight away, you know, whatever the best legendary creature is to play next turn. And then you get another one.
I don't think I've had a single white deck that didn't have like 5 legendary creatures or more.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. A blue-red deck, sure. You know, you can end up with 0 to 4 creatures in your whole deck. But all the white decks are just going to have enough things. So it's 4 mana for a draw 2, the 2 being really some good cards. Not always the best cards in your deck, but generally good cards. And then getting mass double strike plus the ring tempts you, that's a pretty big Chapter 3.
Yeah, the question is it worth it to take turn 4 off to do nothing, to set up for kind of the hammer for the next like 2 or 3 turns? Like, I mean, because now you're going to go legendary, then the next turn, double strike everything, play a legendary, go. Like this is going to be tough for them to come back from, but you could fall pretty significantly behind by casting War on turn 4.
My so far experiences with the format is you can play some cards that are slow like this. You can't play tons.
Then in that case, I'm in.
You can't just show up with 7 cards that don't affect the board that you're intending to cast. But in your white-green deck or white-black deck that has some removal, bunch of creatures, and then has like Dawn of a New Age, War of the Last Alliance, like one of the raised deads that ring tempts you, you can roll with that. And I think that actually works out just fine.
Okay, then I'm in. I mean, this is, the category I put this in is kind of premium draw spell, right? Like it's 4 mana, but it gets you 2 spells. They're 2 of the better spells, maybe even the best spells in your deck. And then that last thing is nice too. I mean, that is something that your opponent really has to plan around, especially because this is turn 4. Even if you just make any 2 plays before turn 4, let's say you play a 1-drop and a 3-drop or a 2-drop and a 3-drop, you should be well set up, to buy yourself time to leverage War of the Last Alliance. So yeah, I'm in. I'll give it a B. I don't know if it's better than that, but I like it.
No, B is about where I'm at. And honestly, I think you do want a couple of cards like this, like the 5 mana 4/5 that you can pay 1 tap, sack a creature to make a draw card, make a food.
Yeah.
Like that card has performed pretty well because the games are not super fast. You need some way to not lose the 10-turn games, and War of the Last Alliance is very good at that.
Yeah, this also, the other thing I like about it is that you don't have to turn 4 this. Like you could curve out normally and then have this be the last card out of your hand, kind of like how we normally play card draw spells. And then you're just like legendary, double strike a huge board and kill your opponent. Okay, this is a big one, Luis. It's Gandalf the White. This is our last white card. It is, of course, a mythic rare 3 white for a legendary avatar wizard. It is a 4/5 with flash. Gandalf will just pop in there whenever he feels like it. You may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though they had flash, so he can kind of conjure up friends and items. If a legendary permanent or an artifact entering or leaving the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. I always hated the wording on this. Yes. It's a cool ability, and I know it's difficult to template, so I don't have a suggestion.
It's not like you have a much better idea, right?
But it is confusing to read, right? But it basically means that it doubles your ETB or leave the battlefield stuff for legendaries and artifacts,
or things that care about other things entering.
Right.
It would also double that.
Right. So if you had a permanent that said whenever a legendary enters a battle, like that would trigger twice.
Yeah. So even if you're not using the second part of the ability all that well, Gandalf is pretty good as a 5 mana 4/5 flash that then gives a bunch of the legends in your deck flash.
Yes.
A lot of what's going to happen here is you're going to play Gandalf and block a 3/3 or 4/4
That's right.
attack.
And that's the thing that I think that people, when you get a sweet mythic, right, that's named after like one of the headline characters for the set, you're probably thinking like, I'm going to do some really busted cool stuff with it. But you should definitely be just gearing down towards this thing is big and blocks well and has flash. And if I can get a 2-for-1 out of just playing a 4/5 and eating a 3/3, I'm good with that. And then there might be other stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's already awesome, right? Like if you just get to
like
eat
a B
their
plus
creature,
just without the last part, right?
Right. And I'm sure that stuff will come up with that too.
I mean, just giving your other stuff flash is pretty good.
It is.
There's some creatures that are pretty nice to play at instant speed. Really good with Lembas bread, the 2 mana food. It gets you scry 2, draw 2.
That's sweet. And I mean, also the play pattern's just really nasty, right? So your opponent's like, okay, I'll attack with these 2 things. And you go, okay, flash in Gandalf, gobble up your creature. Your opponent doesn't have an answer for it. They're like, okay, I'll play this, go. And you draw your card, you play your land, you think for a minute, and you go ahead. And your opponent's like, well, crap, you got 6 mana and like you have 3 cards in hand. Like, are you going to attack again? Or are you going to, Gandalf does become a must kill, pretty quickly. And that's after you've probably gotten some value via combat. So yeah, I mean, I like A for Gandalf the White. It might be an A-. Like this isn't a bomb, on the traditional level, but like this is a very often 2-for-1 that can definitely do powerful things once it's on the battlefield that you can take advantage of as well. Also, this is a type of card that like when you play it on Arena, you will have triggers that you're like, oh, like I didn't realize that triggered, this thing leaves the battlefield and you get extra stuff. So that kind of thing too. So it's like it's probably closer to an A- for Gandalf the White, but I like solid 2-for-1s like this, so I'm going to give it an A.
Yeah, I'm fine with giving it an A, though I agree it's basically an A-.
Yeah. Also, it is interesting because, we are now 3 of the 5 colors through. We haven't gotten to gold or anything where, I'm assuming a lot of the action is, but like These have not been on the level of prior sets where you're like, oh my God, right? Like if you play this card, the game's just over. Like none of these cards have been in that range yet.
No, and even the multicolor rares, there's not that many around that range, which I don't think is bad. I think it's good to have ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
I think March of the Machine did the high risk, high reward play of having tons of incredible cards.
Yes.
And somehow it actually worked out fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work out that cleanly, but here we're doing the other way, which is you don't expect the rare slot in your deck to be a bomb.
Right. Because, I mean, if you told me, all right, here's Gandalf and he's a freaking mythic rare, I would be like, all right, here we go. But it's like, no, it's a good card.
They did lose one good opportunity, which is you cannot pass that spell. Should have been, and this is Raptor's idea, should have been a bomb rare that was so good that you could never pass it. Tell me that wouldn't have been great.
Oh, that would have been really good. And everybody just shrugs and goes, yeah, it says right on the card. All right, that's going to bring us to blue. Our first blue card is called Born Upon a Wind. This is 1 and a blue for an instant at rare. You may cast spells as though they had flash, and you draw a card. So it's just a mediocre cantrip.
Yeah, this is a D. It's like the kind of card that, like, sure, you'll put this card in your deck, if you just are playing blue-red spells and want a cantrip. But
right.
The best thing you can do with this card is cast this, then Cruel Ultimatum, the Born Ultimatum. So,
oh, that's great. Just a little 9 mana end step Cruel, or I guess draw step might even be better. Next card. So D for Born Upon a Wind. Next is Goldberry River Daughter. This is 1 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary nymph, and it's rare. And it has 2 activated abilities. Tap, move a counter of each kind not on Goldberry from another target permanent you control onto Goldberry. And then blue, tap, move 1 or more counters from Goldberry onto another target permanent you control. If you do, draw a card. So she steals all of the counters from one of your things, but it can't be a type of counter that she's already got. And then you can start distributing them around.
No, she steals a counter.
Oh,
so she moves a counter. So she takes a +1/+1 counter. There's 2 main combos
what
here.
What does each kind mean?
If they had somehow different counters on their deck.
So if they had a +1/+1 counter and a flying counter, it would move one of each.
Which is not really super relevant. But so the main combos here are a mass, because the orc armies have +1/+1 counters, and then a lot of the blue-green scry cards reward you with +1/+1 counters. Though there are some other counters sprinkled throughout the set in other colors as well.
Okay.
And she's kind of like a 2-part plan, but you take a counter off the amass army, and then you move it onto something else and draw a card.
Okay. And the downside is that both of these abilities require tapping, so it's a slow process. I mean, getting the card is nice. Like, look, this card's only 2 mana. It's a 1/3, which is a nice ring bearer stat line, and it is a legend in case that's something that you want.
Again, generally upside to have your creatures be a legend.
Right. Also, there's no sorcery speed restriction on these, so you could just have Goldberry out. You could maybe even instant speed make an orc army, move a counter on at end step on your turn, blue, move a thing. You could even use it as a combat trick. You get the card. Like, I don't know. There's enough. This is clunky, but there's enough upside here for my 2 mana 1/3 legend that I'm probably just in for it.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't put this card in my deck if I had no ways to generate counters.
Right.
But first of all, that's not very likely. And second, if you get Goldberry early enough in the draft, you could like slightly prioritize these cards. I can imagine blue-black would always play this card, because I have yet to see a blue-black deck that doesn't have like 7 cards that amass.
Yeah, they threw that on every single card, it seems like.
Yeah, blue-green, similarly. Like, it's going to be pretty hard to imagine blue-green not wanting to play this. So, yeah, I mean, I think Goldberry looks like a B+, just a good card. I mean, if your opponent plays this, again, here's a good test. Your opponent plays this card on turn 2. What are you thinking? You're thinking, damn, I got to kill that thing.
That could be a problem. Yeah, for sure. So that's a good stat. That's a good bar to clear. Next is Lost Isle Calling. This is 1 and a blue for an enchantment at rare. Whenever you scry, put a verse counter on Lost Isle Calling. And could you steal verse counters? Yeah, Goldberry can steal verse counters. And then you can pay 4 blue, and exile Lost Isle Calling to draw a card for each verse counter on it. If it had 7 or more on it, take an extra turn after this one, and you can only do this at sorcery speed. Oh boy. So you have to pay a 2-mana enchantment that does stone nothing.
For probably like 6 turns.
Yeah. And then you have to scry. So this is a build around scry payoff.
Good thing is scrying begets scrying. Once you scry, you find more cards that scry.
And it, of course, it doesn't care how many you're scrying for, right?
Correct. It's every instance of scrying. The payoff, though, the payoff is you draw 7 cards and take an extra turn, after which you can cast all those 7 cards.
Yeah, you definitely win the game if you get to that point.
Look, let's be real. This is a build around D. You probably shouldn't put this card in your deck. I'm gonna try this card if I get this card early enough, or if I'm blue-green in pack 2 and I open this or whatever. Certainly, the payoff is there.
Yeah. This would be a good time to remind people to subscribe to your YouTube channel.
Yeah, right.
Where if you open a Lost Isle Calling, you will be drafting around it and try to get to 7. This thing's just horrible, though, right?
It's not good. Like
even if it's 3,
it can have a powerful effect on the game. I can definitely see winning games where I do this thing, but yeah, it's not a card that is really gonna bear much fruit most of the time. Like, you play this on turn 2 and then 6 turns later it's good. Imagine drawing this card in the middle of the game.
Oh god.
Like, how embarrassing would that be?
And what's the least number that you would crack your Lost Isle Calling for? You know what I mean? Like 3?
It's just such a disaster.
So
if you're
it's also
6 mana for that.
Speed. Yeah, you pay 6 mana, draw 3, go. Yeah, all right. So it's like a build around D, but but we're going to try it. Scroll of Isildur is next. This is 2 and a blue for a saga. It's rare. And chapter 1 is gain control of up to 1 target artifact for as long as you control Scroll of Isildur and the ring tempts you. Chapter 2 is tap up to 2 target creatures, put a stun counter on each of them. Remember, that keeps them tapped for an extra turn. And then chapter 3 is draw a card for each tapped creature target opponent controls. Boy, these feel like a little bit of a stretch, you know?
Yeah.
Like gain control of up to 1 target artifact. Like, that just feels so tacked on. I mean, this really reads the ring tempts you, tap some guys, draw some cards, right? Like,
mostly you're going to tap. You're going to play this, and the first part's going to tempt you, but then not steal an artifact. Maybe you steal a food if they're tapped out, whatever.
Right.
Then you're going to tap 2 things and keep them tapped, and then your opponent's not going to attack, so you're going to end up drawing 2. Like, and maybe you prevented them from attacking with a 3rd creature, because like that they don't want to give you a card or whatever.
Yeah. That's not bad, you know. Like, none of that stuff is terrible.
Yeah. I guess it's only 3 mana, right? Like, this is one of those cards. When I like looked at this, I kind of expected it to cost 4 mana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree.
But
and the gain control of an artifact will randomly do things. It's just, I don't know. I think the disconnect for me is when I see a saga, I'm sort of expecting to be told a story, which this does. I get it, you know, but when the first thing out is gain control of 1 target artifact, you know, for us, you kind of lost me already, because it's like, well, that just doesn't happen, right? Like, what format in Magic could you just play this where you're just always getting something, right? It doesn't really work like that. But then chapter 2 and 3 are like totally middle ground. You know, you could play this in most formats in Magic and have it do something. So it's a little weird. At any rate, power level wise, I don't know. It feels a little bit like I'm spinning my wheels, right? Like, I have to wait till chapter 2. Then it does a thing. Like, tapping 2 things is tough. Maybe keeping them from attacking you. Maybe
so you play this, do nothing besides get tempted.
Mm-hmm.
They like play a creature. Next turn, you're like, tap 2 creatures. They can't attack you the next turn, and you draw 2. You paid 3 mana.
Yeah, it's not bad. You're up a card.
Here's the disaster scenarios. You top deck this in a close game when you need something that does something right away, and this doesn't do anything.
Yes.
Or you play this when they only have 1 creature in play, and then like playing this is just so medium.
It's mediocre.
This looks like a C to me. Like,
yeah.
But I could really believe this operates at a little higher level.
I
But
could
yeah,
too.
for the most part, I don't think this card is very good.
Yeah, I would give it a C, and I would be willing to be proven wrong here. Wait, weren't we supposed to talk about one of the white cards? Or was that?
Oh, that was Dawn of a New Age was the card I was arguing about on Twitter.
And you took the high
my
side
position
on it.
was that it is good, and I believe it is.
And I also came to that conclusion. Should we put Cord on blast?
Nah, he already admitted, like, oh yeah, that card's actually good.
Or did I just put him on blast? A better question.
So.
Press the enemy, speaking of, is next. It's 2 blue for an instant at rare. Return target spell or non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So you can hit things on the stack or non-lands. But it's 4 mana. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. I see.
So it's the Venser ability.
Yeah, but instead of a 2/2, you get this free thing.
But then you get to put a spell on the stack, basically. You get to cast a spell for free out of your hand. I don't think this card's good, because I don't think spending 4 mana to bounce a spell or a non-land permanent is good. And I don't think that you're going to often... For this to be good, it needs to line up where you cast it and it's good, like the effect is good of bouncing something, and you have a spell that you want to cast that is relevant at that time. Like, I
have a question. Is it lesser mana value than press the enemy or than the thing that you hit? It doesn't say. It just says you may cast it.
It's press the enemy.
Okay, so then it's a equal or lesser mana value.
Well, no, sorry. No, it's return target. It's the thing you bounce. So if you bounce an 8-drop, you could play a March of the Ents or whatever.
I see. But if it's a 3, you can only cast a 2 or a 1. And it's only instants and sorceries. Dang, man. I mean, you know me, I love me a bounce spell with upside, but this one feels pretty narrow, because when you're talking about a 4 mana bounce spell, that's tough.
Yeah, because that gives up. Basically, the idea is you bounce their 3-drop and play a 3 mana spell out of your hand. So it's kind of like you made press the enemy into a 1 mana bounce spell. A 1 mana bounce spell is not something to write home about. It's just a marginal playable.
Right. That's the problem.
So you're ending up in a spot where your best case scenario is you turn this into a mid-level playable, and your worst case scenario is a disaster.
That's right. The only thing you're getting out of it is that you can also hit spells. So you could just, blank out their turn or whatever, but it's not worth it. Press the enemy seems bad to me.
Looks like an F to me.
Yeah, it does to me too. The setup cost is too high and the payoff's not there. Next is Rangers of Ithilien, which is 2 blue for a 3/3 human ranger at rare with vigilance. So 4 mana, 3/3 vigilance. And it says, when Rangers enters the battlefield, gain control of up to 1 target creature with lesser power for as long as you control Rangers, then the ring tempts you. That's decent.
4 mana, 3/3 that steals a 2-power creature.
Yeah.
Until this thing dies, plus getting tempted and just has vigilance for no reason. Yeah, great card.
Yeah. It's very random. Yeah. Is this an A?
Oh, yeah. Easy A.
Yeah. This type of effect can swing a board, especially when your opponent looks down and doesn't have removal. Then the game's kind of over in many cases. Next is the Watcher in the Water. This is 3 blue for a legendary Kraken at Mythic Rare. It's a freaking 9/9. And it says Watcher in the Water enters the battlefield tapped with 9 stun counters on it. So if it would become untapped, you remove one of those counters instead. Whenever you draw a card during an opponent's turn, you get a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. And whenever a tentacle you control dies, untap up to 1 target Kraken and put a stun counter on up to 1 target non-land permanent. So you can effectively remove a stun counter from your Watcher in the Water and put it on something else whenever one of your tentacle creatures dies. That's sweet. So the whole thing, though, The whole thing centers around, can you draw cards on your opponent's turn? That's hard to do.
Yeah, there's like Hifley Knots. There's like the ring tempting you doesn't help. There's not that much instant speed card draw, honestly. A lot of it is just sorcery speed.
Yeah.
And
dang, this thing's so cool too.
So when you cast this, how many stun counters do you need to remove before you feel like you might have this thing work?
You mean like how many times does the tentacles need to die?
Right, because like,
or do you mean just untap stun counters?
When you cast this, it's going to take 9 turns to untap.
Yeah, if you don't do anything else, it'll be 9 turns before anything happens.
So if you make 4 tentacles, then this will untap in like 5 turns. While also you've locked down one of their creatures 4 times.
Yeah.
Note that this doesn't tap the creature it puts the stun counter on, which is very weird. But
yes, good point.
The idea is that you chump their attacker and then you stun it.
Yes.
This is enough. I think Watcher in the Water is too slow.
Get there. Man, I wanted to, but no, it's just asking way too much. Because the times when you don't get to do the thing, it's just, you spend 5 mana and we're just like, go. I do nothing. Next and last for blue is Storm of Saruman, which is 4 blue for an enchantment at Mythic. The enchantment has Ward 3, and it says whenever you cast your second spell each turn, copy it, except the copy isn't legendary. You may choose new targets for the copy. Dang, that is so close to being amazing, but you have to double spell after resolving your 6-drop do nothing enchantment?
Yeah, I had this once and it was just really hard to get to work. I think there is something here. My guess is this is going to be another one of those double vision type cards where it's like, this costs a lot. If you do the right thing afterwards, it does pay you off, but that thing is not always going to come up, and having a 6-mana lead brick in your hand is just going to weigh you down in too many games. So it's kind of like a build around B, where if you have a deck with a lot of removal and card draw, and this is your finisher, it's kind of nice because, you've had the experience, right? You have this like control deck, got removal, got card draw, but your finisher is kind of weak. And when you play it, your opponent's like, finally, I've got a bunch of removal spells I can unload on that.
Yeah.
And you're like, dang, this didn't quite work. On the other hand, if you're turn 6, if you can get the board clear and then turn 6 play Storm of Saruman, all of a sudden you're in a spot where like your opponent's like, oh, this is going to be problematic. So you're like, play a cantrip, play a removal spell, kill your 2 things.
Yep.
Play a card draw spell, play a creature that now is copied because it copies creatures, copies anything you play as your second spell.
Even legendary. So, the thread that I see here with Storm of Saruman is 1 activation is probably enough. Right?
I think at 2 is when I think you start to feel like you've gotten there.
You've really started to roll, I think, when you get 2. But like those 2 examples you gave, like your opponent's not coming back from double removal spell or double decent creature very often.
Yeah,
and
but if you play 1
3.
spell, this costs 6. Like you're going to need to get more than 1 spell out of a 6-mana card, right? You do need to get 2.
But I guess what I'm saying is that the way it's designed is you've effectively played 3 spells in 1 turn. Right. So like that's a really tough turn for your opponent to come back from. It's also really tough to set up on your side, which is, of course, the problem here. I mean, this looks like a build around D, but I'm going to take it like it's an A.
Sure. Yeah. That's about where I'm at.
That moves us to black, where our first card is Call of the Ring. This is 1 and a black for an enchantment at rare. At the beginning of your upkeep, the ring tempts you. Okay. So that just happens every upkeep. Nice. And whenever you choose a creature as your ring bearer, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. Wow. So this is just turbo ring.
So every turn you get tempted. So you get up to 4 very quickly.
Super fast.
And you basically always have the option to pay 2 life to draw a card, which one thing that's nice, this isn't like Bitter Blossom or Phyrexian Arena, though obviously it has like calls back to those a bit. You don't have to use that part of the ability. Like how good is just the first part? 2 mana enchantment, you get tempted every turn.
I don't know. I mean, how good you've played? How good is getting the ring up to 4?
I mean, pretty good. If you get the ring up to 4, you get a hard to block creature that loots when it attacks, and then gets to hit them for an additional 3 whenever you hit them.
And I mean, even if you only use the second ability once you've gotten your Call of the Ring card back for 2 life, but fine. This seems really powerful to me.
Yeah, and also if you know you have this card, if you're building around it, you can play with a bunch of the cards that pay you off when you get tempted, which there are a fair amount
of. What is the wording? So it says whenever you choose a creature as your ring bearer, like, does that mean that it wasn't the ring bearer but becomes it? Or is it just whenever you do the ring tempts you thing?
And have a creature in play. So
have a creature in play.
If you play this turn 2, on turn 3 you're going to get tempted, but you can't choose a creature, so you don't get to pay the 2 life. So you kind of want to play a 1-drop first. That's like ideal.
Okay.
But every time you have a creature in play, even if you choose the same creature who already was bearing the ring, you still get the thing.
You'll get the card.
This looks like B around a B to me.
Yeah.
It'll play really well in some games.
B for Call of the Ring. Yeah, I mean, just continuous card draw. If you combine it with food or something, you can kind of pop off. All right, next is Orcish Bowmasters. This is 1 and a black for a 1/1 Orc Archer. At rare, it's got flash. And when Orcish Bowmasters enters a battlefield, and whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one they draw on each of their draw steps, the Bowmasters deals 1 damage to any target and then amass orcs 1.
So straight up, 2 mana 1/1 flash, deal 1, make a 1/1. Fantastic card.
Wow. So it just does that one at ETBs. That's sweet.
Just this card is absurd. I mean, this is probably the best card in the set overall. Like, not for limited, just like for constructed / commander, I think it's the best card.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, the fact that every time they draw an extra card, you also get a 1/1 plus a ping, like to any target, is unbelievable.
Yeah, by the time in Commander, by the time it's your turn, you might have a 3/3 already to go with them. You might have like a 7/7. Someone, I mean, you realize in Commander, someone casts a Wheel of Fortune and you cast this, you get a 21/21 and deal 21 damage. Like, you do? Whenever an opponent draws a card, I don't get it. So is it for each card?
Each card.
What?
If you cast this in response to them casting, like in limited, the 5 mana sorcery, draw 3, you get a 1/1, a 3/3, and an Arc Lightning, a deal 3 divided as you choose.
Oh, that's incredible. Okay. I was thinking each instance of card draw beyond the first.
This one's not capped in any way. This is, there's no once per turn. There's no every time this happens. This is just straight up the Orc Gatling gun.
All right. Yeah. Awesome. And you can even wait until they put a card draw on the stack and get all of it.
That's the joke. So okay. I think Orcish Bowmasters is an ETA because I think 2 mana 1/1 plus 1/1 plus deal 1 was already like B plus A minus levels.
Seriously.
Like, the card is just
at instant speed.
I mean, the rate on that is just kind of ridiculous.
Especially during combat. Like, that is incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. A for Orcish Bowmasters. Next is Lobelia Sackville Baggins. This is 2 and a black for a 2/3 legendary halfling citizen at rare with flash and menace. So 3 mana flash menace. And when Lobelia enters a battlefield, exile target creature card from an opponent's graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. Then create X treasure tokens where X is the exile card's power. Dang, that's a nice card.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid little card. I mean, 3 mana 2/3 flash menace can do a little ambushing. Can, like you played into turn attack with a good attacker. But if you can ever catch a combat, 3 mana 2/3 that makes 2 to 3 treasures is a fantastic card. And
yeah,
the dream is a little higher than that even.
Yeah, so I like that this card plays out as a curve filler 3-drop that might even ambush, but also has that upside. That's great. Sometimes it feels like these cards are one or the other, and you're like, okay, but this just has this like tacked on upside that's just really nice.
Right. I mean, the card like the call time card that was like the 3 mana instant that makes a 2/2 for every creature that died, right? Where like a lot of the time you're sitting on that and you're like, I can't play this card. It's not doing anything.
Right.
Lobelia just has the upside of that kind of card, but also is just a fine card to cast if nothing's going on. Which
totally. Just
puts it in a better class. So I like B+ for Lobelia.
Me too. Especially with just the ability to occasionally ambush a 2/2 with it. Now you're just getting pure upside there. Isildur's Fateful Strike. This is 2 black for a legendary instant. Oh boy, legendary instant. That's a rare. There's a reminder text here that says, you may cast a legendary instant only if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. So you can't even put this thing on the stack, but the Ring Bearer probably smooths that over. What does it do? It destroys target creature. Then, if its controller has more than 4 cards in hand, they exile cards from their hand equal to the difference. Down to 4.
Yeah. So that part is not going to come up over much, but it is an instant. You can draw step it. So they have like 5 cards in hand. You say go. They draw up to 6. You're like, all right, draw step. Boom. Kill your thing, and then you exile 2 cards. Pretty nice little beating there. And then it also, it's a 4-mana kill any creature for 4 mana. Yes, you do have to have a legendary creature. I don't think that's a big challenge. I believe you could put this into your average black deck and not have too much of a problem casting it. Yes, sometimes you will run into, oh man, I didn't have a chance to, I couldn't cast this when I wanted to.
Yeah.
And in that case, yeah, it'll be bad. But most of the time, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and if this card was just an instant, it would be really good, right? Like this would be a B+ or a B, like premium removal, right? Since you can't, I'd probably just cap it at B. Like you said, it's not automatic, but like I don't view this as a huge roadblock to casting the spell. And it's going to be good almost anytime you cast it. Yeah, earlier the better for getting cards out of their hand, but it's also worse because you're usually killing like a cheaper creature or something not quite as powerful that you might want to save it for. So, split the difference. I would give Isildur's Fateful Strike a B. I think you're going to be able to cast it, and it's really powerful when you do. I
agree.
Next is One Ring to Rule Them All. They had to. It's 2 black for a saga at rare. And chapter 1 is the ring tempts you. Then each player mills cards equal to your ring bearer's power. So a couple of cards probably. And then 2, destroy all non-legendary creatures. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then 3 is each opponent loses 1 life for each creature card in that player's graveyard. Oh, wait. Oh, each opponent. Oh, yeah. So that's sweet. So the crux of this, of course, is chapter 2, destroy all non-legendary creatures. How does that sit with you after having played the set on the pre-release? There's a lot of legends, right?
There's a lot of legends, and they can also generally make their best creature into a legend if it wasn't one already. Like, it's not automatic, but it's not hard to do that. You get a lot of decks tempted by the rings in all the colors, and the cards are generally priced to move, or at least some of them are. And overall, if they have 3 creatures in play, this probably kills their 2 weakest. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll have 4 or 5. If they have 4 or 5 creatures, my guess is they would be left with maybe 2 of them at the end of it. They just have a random legend plus tempted by the ring, and they know it's coming, right? It's kind of a telegraph there.
Okay. And then chapter 3, that could do a lot.
Yeah, they can lose, 3 to 10 life or something. The chapter 1 kind of plays into that. My guess is I had this in one of my decks and it was good, but there was definitely games where it was not. I guess is overall this card is probably worse than it looks. It's I think worse than the common, 1 black, kill any creature, get tempted by the ring.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. On one hand, you could view this as a wrath. On the other hand, you could view it as a slow, incomplete wrath that often leaves the best creatures behind. Where would you take this? Is this a card, if you opened it, you're like, okay, we got 1 ring to rule them all, let's do this? Or is it like, let's see what else we got in the pack? Like you said, looking for the premium common removal or
I don't think this card is. I think it's okay, and I think there's matchups where it's going to be good, but the combination of it being slow, it being situational, chapter 1 and 3 not necessarily doing like all that much. I think all of that together makes it. This is probably closer to a C than it is a B.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It does feel like it's got problems. You said, situationally, it could be the best card in your deck and it might do some amazing things, but We'll go right in the middle, C for One Ring to rule them all, which is a little weird because it's probably more likely a D- or a B+. We'll find out. Next is Sauron the Necromancer. This is 3 black for a 4/4 legendary avatar horror. At regular rare, it's a menace, so 5 mana 4/4 menace. Whenever Sauron the Necromancer attacks, exile target creature card from your graveyard. Create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that card, except for it's a 3/3 black wraith with menace. And at the beginning of the end step, exile that token unless, wow, you get to keep it if Sauron is your ring bearer.
So I have played with and against this card. It only has to be the ring bearer when it reanimates the token. If it then dies or loses ring bearer status later, it doesn't matter because it only looks at it like the first time that happens, basically.
Oh, okay.
So if Sauron's the ring bearer when this attacks, you're golden.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I would not have read it that way, but that's good to know. A card seems really good, right? I mean, 5 mana 4/4 menace is already kind of threatening, but if you get to turn it sideways, like, that cannot be good for your opponent, right? Like,
yeah, I think that 5 mana 4/4 menace that when it attacks gets a big upside is awesome.
Yeah, so, and it's easy to look at that and say, oh well, my really awesome creature becomes like a 3/3 instead of the 5/5 it was, but it also like upgrades small creatures, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you also still get like the ETB and all that stuff.
Yeah, attack for 7. Both creatures have menace, and they're, Sauron's like basically a must deal with. Yeah. I think I would go B+ for Sauron the Necromancer. Like, there's enough power here to make me interested in, in taking this pretty highly.
Yeah, I think B+ is about right. A lot of the time you're going to play this and they'll remove it because it's 5 mana 4/4, no ETB. But if it does get to attack, you're probably quite happy about it.
Yeah. Witch King of Angmar is next. This is 3 black for a 5/3 legendary Wraith Noble at Mythic Rare with flying. So 5 mana 5/3 flyer. Whenever one or more creatures deal combat damage to you, each opponent sacrifices a creature that dealt combat damage to you this turn. The ring tempts you. And so that's the thing. And then it has the activated ability, discard a card. Witch King of Angmar gains indestructible until end of turn, and you tap it. So if you get hit, each opponent, they have to sacrifice a creature, one of the creatures that hit you.
Yeah, just one, but it has to be one of the attacking creatures, which is, presumably a good card.
Yeah. And then you also just get random ring temps flying around whenever they hit you.
And it's 5 mana for a 5/3 flyer that's really hard to kill.
Yeah, like if they try to kill it to enable an attack, you can discard a card to save it.
Would this be a B+ or A- without the middle text? If it was 5 mana 5/3 flying, discard a card, it gets indestructible. I think that's like an A-.
It's probably an A-. It's a real problem if you have any card left in your hand.
Smite the Deathless flavorfully works on this because it strips indestructible. Obviously, Exile works and all that, but
yeah,
that's already A-. The middle ability is very good. Like, if you cast this card and you're at like 16, your opponent's like, well, I can't attack you while this is in play.
Right.
Also, it's a 5/3 flying indestructible, so it's not like I'm winning by not attacking you.
Right.
Looks like an A to me. Witch King of Angmar looks pretty much unpassable.
That's an A. Yeah. Really good card, man. And it ends the game quick. That's the only downside. You never get to use all the sweet abilities. Last black card is called Shadow of the Enemy. It is 3 black, so 6 mana for a sorcery. It's mythic. And it says, exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard. You may cast spells from among those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them. A little bit weird on the wording, but you just get to take basically all their creatures and you can
draw their whole graveyard of creatures.
Right.
I want this to be good. I think it's probably closer to an F than a playable. I can definitely see a game where you're like, cast this after we've stalled out on turn 10. It's a draw 5, but it's 3 black, doesn't affect the board. And sometimes even late in the game, they have 2 creatures in their graveyard.
Yeah, exactly. So. No, it's an F. This is a type of card that looks flashy, but when you compare it to like even just common blue card draw spells, they just outpace it as far as wins goes. Okay, that's it for black. So that'll move us to gold. First card up is called, it's Pippin. It's Pippin, Guard of the Citadel, or should I say Kittadel? Just to troll that guy. Blue-white for a 2/2 legendary creature, halfling soldier at rare. It's got Vigilance and Ward 1. So pretty good already. 2 mana, 2/2 Vigilance, Ward 1. Activated ability, tap it. Another target creature you control gains protection from the card type of your choice until end of turn. And it says it can't be blocked, targeted, dealt damage, enchanted, or equipped by anything of that type. That's really good.
Awesome card.
That's really good.
I mean, this card is really, really strong. It's a 2 mana 2/2 with Vigilance and Ward 1 that they have to kill before they kill any of your other creatures.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically what that
it's modern templated where it can't target itself. So if they do have removal, they can use it on it, but it has Ward 1. You can also, of course, attack with it and then use it on something else.
Also, if they don't have removal, this card locks them out, right? You can block with one of your creatures and save it from combat. They can't, if they have maybe specific removal that can't hit Pippin, then you end up in a spot where they can't kill your other creatures. It kind of does all the things you want it to do.
Yeah. Is it better than a B?
Yeah, I think this is probably like B plus A minus level.
Yeah.
If you really don't have removal, you just lose.
Yes. And that's on your 2 mana creature, by the way. So
right.
B plus A minus for Pippin, Guard of the Citadel. Next is Faramir, Prince of Ithilien. This is 2 blue-white for a 3/3 legendary human noble at rare. At the beginning of your end step, choose an opponent. At the beginning of that player's next end step, you draw a card if they didn't attack you that turn. Otherwise, create 3 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. What? You get
Outrageous.
Either one?
Yeah, you're gonna get one of the two. There's no way for them to.
Holy crap! That's a good. So at the beginning, on my turn, I say you, and then all the way through their turn, nothing happens. But when they get to their end step, this thing triggers.
Yeah, but you want to hear something gross?
Huh.
If you cast this and choose the opponent because they're like tapped out, if they then kill this on their main phase, it still pops into turn.
Oh, no way.
Once the ability resolves, it sets up that delayed trigger.
Oh,
and
that is amazing.
And that doesn't go away. So Faramir is almost always 4 mana 3/3 draw card or 4 mana 3/3 plus 3 1/1s. That's basically the floor. Yes, technically you could cast this and they kill it before your end step, but that's not really going to happen.
This is awesome.
If this sits in play, it's just unbeatable. Like you're getting a card no matter what, and sometimes that card is actually is 3 1/1s, but that's 0 mana make 3 1/1s is sometimes better than a card. So
it plays perfectly too, because if they attack you, you want the 1/1s, and if they don't, you want the card.
Yeah.
Okay, Faramir, we get it. You're pretty good.
That's an A.
That's an A for me.
You're going to lose really quickly to this card, and the fact that they can't kill it to get out of it. Like you get one almost no matter what is really, really strong.
That's an insult. Next is Sauron's Ransom. This is 1 blue-black for an instant at rare. Choose an opponent. They look at the top 4 cards of your library and separate them into a face-down pile and a face-up pile. Put one pile in your hand and the other into your graveyard. The ring tempts you. They can do this any way they want, right?
Yeah, they could do 3/1. They could do 0/4 technically if they saw fit.
So this is a nice little card draw spell. Gets you 2 cards.
It gets you. It's really unlikely to get less than 2 cards.
Right. Exactly.
It gets you 2 cards plus a ring tempts you, and because you get to choose based on the piles that are there. Yeah, it's even slightly better, I think, than a draw 2. Like. Because your opponent can like maybe make the wrong piles, or you can kind of win the mind game. One thing to keep in mind with these cards I always bring up is people kind of naturally want to take the face down pile because that's the one that like could have something cool in it.
Mm-hmm.
So just be aware of that. Sometimes you're going to want to stack if you're playing against it, stack it so that you end up getting that that pile.
Yeah.
Like you want to put the slightly worse cards in the face down pile, but make it plausible so that they do that, you know?
So they're tempted to get it. How is instant speed, the ring tempts you, something that we care about? Maybe only on that fourth?
It doesn't. Yeah. The fourth one is the only one that works. It doesn't really work otherwise.
Okay. So we just have a nice little value card here, right? Get you a couple cards in a ring tempt. That's good.
I mean, it's an instant too, so there's some counter spells in the set, so instants tend to be a little better than they would be otherwise. So I would say it's a B. Soren's Ransom isn't out of control, but it's good.
Sharky, Tyrant of the Shire. This is 2 blue-black for a 2/4 legendary avatar rogue. It's rare. Activated ability of lands your opponents control can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. Okay, so it shuts down cute stuff on lands. Sharky, Tyrant of the Shire has all activated ability of lands your opponents control except mana abilities, so Sharky steals those abilities. And then mana of any type can be spent to activate Sharky's abilities.
Yeah, this is an F. Stupid. It's a 4 mana 2/4 no abilities. Like there is a cycle of legendary lands, but that's not really,
that could be funny. That could be funny in a cube or something, but Shagrat, Loot Bearer. This is 2 black-red for a 4/4 legendary orc soldier at rare. Whenever Shagrat Loot Bearer attacks, attach up to 1 target equipment to it. Then amass Orcs X, where X is the number of equipment attached to Shagrat.
This is a C because it's a 4 mana 4/4 legendary orc, but that's basically it.
Yeah, has legendary, has relevant creature type, has decent stats. Next is the Balrog Durin's Bane. This thing better be huge. It is. 5,
it's pretty big, yeah.
Yeah, 5 red-black for a legendary avatar demon at regular rare. I kind of thought the Balrog would be a mythic. Anyway, it's a 7/5 with haste. Okay, that's big. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each permanent sacrifice this turn. Nice. The Balrog can't be blocked except by legendary creatures. That's sweet. And when the Balrog dies, destroy target artifact or creature an opponent controls. It takes Gandalf with it. This is awesome. The design is great. Every line of that thing is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's also pretty good, I think. I mean,
what is the sack part? Like, do I care?
You'd have to have 0 mana sack outlets before you were really, really feeling it. But yeah, for the most part, I think that 7 mana, 7/5 haste that takes something down, and it's also hard to block. Mm-hmm. That's a good finisher.
That's a game ender. Yeah.
You're going to play Balrog and you're going to attack and kill them, and it's going to be pretty good.
Wouldn't be shocked to see people splash for this too in like a rampy deck.
If you're playing green-black or something, it's not hard to play a mountain with some land searching effects and you just slam this.
Right. I like B for the Balrog.
Yeah.
This is a good top-end finisher, but we're not going to give it, some insane.
I mean,
rate.
7 mana spells just have their own drawback. It's that they cost 7. So.
Exactly. Next is Gimli, Mournful Avenger. Sad Gimli is 1 green-red for a 3/2 legendary dwarf warrior at rare. Gimli, Mournful Avenger has indestructible as long as 2 or more creatures died under your control this turn. Does that mean that when does he get the indestructible?
Not the way you want.
Okay. So he just for the turn?
Yeah. So like you block with Gimli and 2 other creatures in combat. Gimli is going to die if he takes lethal damage.
So you need some type of weird sack outlet or something. All right. Another ability. Whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Gimli. When this ability resolves for the 3rd time this turn, Gimli fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. This one to me, is that, how did you describe it? More flavor than function or something? Flavor over function? This feels like that too. It's cool, I get it, but it's like, it's a lot to try to figure out in game, and the payoff just doesn't seem like amazing to me, unless I'm missing something.
No, I mean, it's going to end up being a pretty decent creature that grows as like combat happens. Yeah. One thing that's a little tricky about this card is it looks like it has a big promise of like 2 creatures die, it's indestructible, and then the 3rd creature dies and it fights something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a 3-mana 3/2 in a creature heavy deck that grows whenever a creature dies, like if it didn't have all the weird text, if it just had when another creature you control dies, this gets a +1/+1 counter. I feel like you wouldn't feel terrible about this.
No, I think it'd be okay. It's just hard to figure out the rest of it.
Yeah.
I guess I just have no idea how that first thing's ever going to be relevant.
It's not, but the card is still priced all right. Besides that, the biggest drawback of Gimli, I think, is that red-green doesn't seem like a very cohesive deck, and that's like a whole different thing.
But Gimli looks like a C to me.
Yeah, I think it's a C.
Doors of Durin is next. This is 3 red-green for a legendary artifact. It's rare. Whenever you attack, scry 2, then you may reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and attacking until your next turn. It gains trample if you control a dwarf and hexproof if you control an elf. Wait, that's the end.
Yeah,
you don't have to get rid of it.
No, it just stays in play.
And you get to scry 2 to dig.
Yep, you get to set it up nicely.
Speak, friend, and enter. I'm in.
Yeah, I think it's good.
I do too. Wow. It's also like this is a type of card that, like, if you hit anything off of it, it's pretty good, but it has a chance to be stupid, right? If you hit a 6-drop or something, it's like, oh, okay, whatever, like you attacked and all of a sudden I'm getting slammed on by, your most expensive card for free and you get to keep it. I guess the main downside is just that if you're behind it, it's pretty bad. You can still chip in with 1 creature and try to get a trigger off of it, but like that's a long way to go to try to stabilize a board.
Yeah. I think that this is the kind of card where if you have an all creature deck, this would be a really good card to add to it. It's kind of like the Elven Chorus, right?
Yeah,
where
it feels like
you just make your 17 creature deck and then you get to really go off with this thing.
Yeah. And of course it's awarding assertiveness, right? It's trying you want to play this in attack for sure.
Yeah. If you don't have creatures in play, this card's pretty bad.
Yeah. I would give it a build around grade. I wouldn't just throw this into any old green-red deck. I really do. You do need to have enough creatures and you do want to lean towards being a little more on the assertive side. But I would give it a B. I'd give it a build around B for Doors of Durin.
I like build around B for Doors. I mean, and the build around is not hard.
No, it's just that it's just recognizing that you can't just put it into a deck with 11 creatures or something and expect it to really go well. I guess worst case, you still get Scry 2.
Right, but you should just, not do that.
Next it's our boy, Samwise Gamgee. This is green. Oh, he's with his kids. It's green-white for a 2/2 legendary halfling peasant. At rare, whenever another non-token creature enters a battlefield under your control, create a food token. Nice. And then it says sacrifice 3 foods, return target historic card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's a food payoff and a food generator. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Price to move, 2 mana. I think it's going to be pretty easy to get good value from this card.
Definitely. 2 mana 2/2 that just spits out a bunch of food is already kind of good. And then, normally you would think, well, but what am I going to do to get a good payoff for them? Because sometimes just gaining the life is good, but a lot of times you want something else to do with it. And this gives you something to do with it. You can get back, realistically one of your better cards, right? Artifacts, fine, but legendaries and sagas are often some of your better cards.
Yeah, and you're going to end up with enough legendaries where this is going to be pretty decent. So,
do you have a sense for how important, how useful the foods are beyond just Samwise's activated ability? Like, is it a big deal to get if you play this on 2 and then you go creature, and you get 2 foods for free?
It's going to be context dependent because there are some really good cards that use up food. Right, like Shire Sheriff, the 1 and a white 2/2 that you can sack a token to Fiend Hunt or something, to exile something. Mm-hmm. There's that sort of thing. But most of the time, a food is going to be a food and you can sack it to gain 3 and that's just okay.
Okay.
The thing is white-green and green-black, like the green-white-black kind of tri-color thing, has a decent amount of ways to use food. So Samwise is a little better, but also Samwise just gives you a way to use food. Every 3rd creature you play lets you regrowth one of your creatures.
Okay. I like B for Samwise then.
Yeah.
That's just doing a lot, right, for your
I'm
2
gonna
mana.
It's a very solid card.
Next is Aragorn, Company Leader. 1 green-white for a 3/3 legendary human ranger at rare. And whenever the ring tempts you, if you chose a creature other than Aragorn as your ring bearer, put your choice of a counter from among First Strike, Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink on Aragorn. So it rewards you for not choosing Aragorn as a ringleader or as a ring bearer.
There's a bunch. There's basically all the legends in the story who didn't take the ring reward you for choosing other, Faramir, Aragorn, Elrond, all that stuff.
Okay, but they also allow you to do it because they don't want to bust it.
Right. It would be just bad gameplay if they didn't let you do it.
And then it says whenever you put 1 or more counters on Aragorn, put one of each of those kind of counters on up to 1 other target creature. Wow. So you really get paid for ring bearing with Aragorn out. 3 mana, 3/3, and then it just starts throwing around First Strike, Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink counters on it and something.
All these awesome abilities. I mean, you can very easily assemble the First Strike, Death Touch combo.
Yeah.
You can easily assemble Lifelink plus, First Strike or whatever, Lifelink plus Death Touch. The only one it's missing is flying, basically, because I guess Aragorn didn't fly. But I think Aragorn Company Leader is an A-. You don't need to do much work. They give away tempting all over the place, and when you start to get tempted by Aragorn, it will start to be very good.
Yeah, you need Aragorn and one other thing, and you can pop off A- for Aragorn. Next is Arwen, Mortal Queen. Oh, Arwen got the mythic treatment here, though. This is same casting cost, 1 green-white. This time, though, Arwen's a 2/2 elf noble, and she's, of course, legendary. And it says, Arwen enters a battlefield with an indestructible counter on it. And that's the kind that just stays, right? It's just she has indestructible.
Yeah, straight up does.
Yep.
Well,
and then you
keep reading.
And then you can pay 1 mana. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily stay. You can pay 1 mana, remove an indestructible counter from Arwen, and another target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter and a lifelink counter on that creature, and a +1/+1 counter and a lifelink counter on Arwen.
Unbelievably good card.
That is insane.
3 mana, 2/2 indestructible. Some decks are going to look at this and be like, wait, what am I supposed to do about that?
I can't do anything.
I'm attacking you on the ground. So that's just straight up 3 mana, 2/2 indestructible is absurdly annoying. But then also when the time is right, you're like, all right, well, I'm going to cash this in. I'm going to make one of my other creatures indestructible so it wins a fight. And then also it gets +1/+1 and lifelink. And then Arwen's now a 3/3 lifelinker.
That's stupid. This is actually really annoying.
It's really hard to beat, I think.
This is one of the most annoying cards because it sits there as like you said, a lot of times you just look at your removal and you're like, well, I can't get rid of it. Like I could turn over my whole deck and I can't get through Arwen, on the ground, which doesn't mean you lose the game, but it's a huge speed bump and difficult to manage. And then on board trick is I get to save my other best creature and make both of them amazing. And you're just like, well, I can't beat that either. I mean, I like A for Arwen Mortal Queen.
Easy A.
That card seems unreal. Next is Lotho Corrupt Sheriff, which is white-black for a 2/1 legendary halfling rogue at rare. And it says, whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token. That's a 2-drop? Just a regular 2/1?
Seems pretty good to me.
Oh, man. I don't love not having control.
Right.
Letting my opponent just be like, all right, I'll double spell and lose you
the
a
losing
life.
The life part is a little annoying because it's like, yeah, they're gonna choose when they want to make you lose a life. But if you play this card early and you get a treasure or 2 treasures out of it, you're going to be really happy.
It's really worth it.
And then some of the time it's going to actually restrict what they can do or what they want to do.
It's also a gold 2-drop that's only a 2/1. I don't know. What do you think about Lotho?
I think it's a B. I think if you're black-white, you're always going to put this card in your deck.
Yeah.
And
that treasure
you're not going to be unhappy. Like getting a treasure in the early game is huge. If you double spell on turn 4 with this card in play, it just makes the next double spelling easier because now you have a treasure. And it's really your opponent's going to feel it when they have to play 2 cards in the same turn. And then if the life loss is an issue, start attacking with Lotho and it'll get off the board quickly.
Yeah, that's true. You can also just turn it sideways. What is, so B for Lotho, what does King of the Oathbreakers do?
It is a 2 black-white for a 3/3 flying spirit noble. It's legendary. Whenever King of the Oathbreakers or another spirit you control becomes the target of a spell, it phases out. So it just like basically disappears. And then at the beginning of your next turn, it comes back in. Whenever a King of the Oathbreakers or another spirit you control phases in, create a tapped 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying.
Okay.
So this card is completely absurd. They can never kill it with a spell. It's actually just impossible. They could have 20 lightning bolts in their hand and they're like, okay, kill your guy. Well, it phases out. Okay, in response, kill your guy. Okay, well, it phases out. It just keeps triggering. So they can never kill it with a spell. And then if they have to target it, like let's say they're at 3 and you're attacking, they play Smite the Deathless on it, right? It phases out. Then when it comes back, you get a spirit token.
So they have to kill you.
Yes, basically.
While it's phased out.
Or kill it with an ability. Like they can get it with like Shire Sheriff or some kind of ability that. Mm-hmm.
But what I mean is they use their removal spells to temporarily get it out of the way and try to finish you off while it's phased out.
Yeah, they could definitely do that.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Like normally when you cast a removal spell, you're anticipating that the creature will remain gone. But in this case, it turns it into like a bounce spell or blink spell or something like that. But then when it comes back, it's worse for you because it starts spitting out tokens too. So you really have to close out the game in that window.
Yeah,
card seems extremely annoying.
It also protects your other spirits.
Oh, really?
It's
or another spirit. Oh, God.
Which is kind of funny.
Can tokens phase out? I can't remember.
Tokens can phase out, yeah.
Okay. That's why phasing out came back, because you can just sort of keep everything the way it was.
Yeah, and it doesn't trigger enter the battlefield effects either.
Right.
But basically this is a 4-mana 3/3 flying unkillable.
Yeah.
Or extremely hard to kill. Yeah, that's good.
That's really good.
That's like a B+.
Definitely. Yeah. I like King of the Oathbreakers. I'm not going to like it on the battlefield. Next is Flame of Anor, which is 1 blue-red for an instant at rare. It says choose 1. If you control a wizard as you cast the spell, you may choose 2 instead. Target player draws 2 cards, destroy an artifact, and Flame of Anor deals 5 damage to target creature. Boy. Man. I mean, that's pretty good, right? But if you get to choose 2, that is like dumb. Kill a creature, draw 2 for 3 mana at instant speed.
There's not that many wizards in the set.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's still a card that 3 mana instant speed deal 5 or 3 mana instant speed draw 2 is fantastic. And then I guess you could destroy an artifact. But
yeah, you could destroy one of those incredible equipment.
Yeah. I think Flame of Anor is a B+.
Definitely.
Just a good rate spell. You're generally going to be happy taking this card.
And if you have random wizards, it's an A. Next is Gandalf the Grey, although he's blue-red. 3 blue-red for a 3/4 legendary avatar wizard at rare. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, choose 1 that hasn't been chosen. And there are 4 options. The first is you may tap or untap target permanent. Gandalf the Grey deals 3 damage to each opponent. You can copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. So I guess that's the one that you just put on the stack there. And then the last one is put Gandalf on top of its owner's library. So he kind of gets a little tired, needs a little recharge of the old batteries, runs away, but then you just get to do it all over again. That card's dumb. Yeah, that's insane.
Gandalf is absurd. Like, you're almost always going to choose the copy of spell mode as the first one because that's the money. You're immediately going to want to get that one going. Mm-hmm. But 5 mana 3/4, if they don't kill it, you then untap and cast even just the Isolation at Orthanc, right? Like the 4 mana, put a creature second from the top. Just put 2 of their creatures away. And then The next time you cast a spell, you get to nug them for 3, and then at some point maybe you untap a permanent, so you get a 1 mana discount, so you can double spell. Worst comes to worst, you put a land back on top, and that's also fine.
You put a land back on top?
Or sorry, I mean Gandalf back on top.
Oh yeah, and then you get to do it all over again.
Yeah, I don't know how often you're going to really do that, but like,
I mean, is the game going to be over?
It also does save Gandalf. If you have an instant speed spell and they try to kill him, you just cast that and poof, Gandalf just poof disappears.
Oh my God! I didn't even think about
that. Gandalf's an A. Just this is what you want in your blue-red deck.
Wow, that's incredible. There's also like if you're short on mana, you could like do the untap thing to like cast a spell and then cast another spell to put Gandalf away to save him. Like that is just nuts. I like A for Gandalf the Grey as well. Next is Smeagol, Helpful Guide. 1 black-green for a 4/2 legendary halfling horror at rare. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, the ring tempts you. And whenever the ring tempts you, target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card. Put that card onto the battlefield tapped under your control and the rest into their graveyard. You steal their lands?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it kind of mills them a bit. Like obviously like milling isn't always like bad. Like you can fill their graveyard of stuff. But if this triggers enough time, your opponent's gonna start to feel it. Like you are gonna get to actually get some deck damage in. And ideally, you trade off creatures on turn 3, like your 2-drop trades, and then you go play Smeagol, immediately get tempted, and then do the whole thing. Also, if you just have a bunch of ways to get tempted, the whole thing works too.
Right. And what you meant was you enter combat trade and then you play Smeagol second main. Like they didn't know that was part of what was at stake. Yeah. Huh. Smeagol, not what I expected, but pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a good card. It's not hard to get some good value out of that.
Is it a B?
I would say it's a B. It's not like, a card you're gonna get like super excited to have, but there's times when it's good. I've seen it be kind of medium too.
Man, Black Green got some heavy hitters. They got Smeagol and Shelob, Child of Ungoliant. This is 4 black green for an 8/8 legendary spider demon at rare with Death Touch and Ward 2 and not reach. Okay. It has Death Touch and Ward 2. Other spiders you control have Death Touch and Ward 2. I'm assuming that's kind of trinket text. And then it says, whenever another creature dealt damage this turn by a spider you controlled dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a food artifact with 2 tap, sacrifice this artifact. You gain 3 life, and it loses all other types. It wraps up the creature and turns it into a little tasty snack for later. That's pretty cool. So you're getting a 6 mana 8/8 Death Touch, which is kind of redundant, probably. Ward 2 is nice though.
Yeah, and it gives all your other spiders Death Touch, which also is irrelevant because they basically all have. But 6 mana 8/8 Ward 2 is obviously just a fantastic thing.
Yeah, and then anything that tussles with Shelob and dies turns into a food.
Yeah, which is really nice too, because it means that one of the biggest drawbacks of 6-drops is that you can lose tempo and your opponent can kind of, get under you. If this kills one thing and they're going to have to jump soon, you're kind of out of that. You're not worried about that anymore.
And Ward 2 is a good deterrent. Yeah, this card seems powerful. I'm really impressed, by the way. These rares are very balanced. They're very flavor driven.
But you can imagine beating all of them, right?
Definitely. They're not great. Like Smeagol's not like, oh my God, right? Like Gandalf, okay, that thing's kind of dumb. But
Gandalf is near the top end, but King of the Oathbreakers, 4 mana, 3/3 flying, unkillable. Well, you can beat that card. There's a lot of ways to do that.
Right. Yeah, so Shelob to me it's probably like a B+. Like, I don't even know if Shelob gets into the A range for me. 8/8 is huge for 6 mana. It is hard to kill. Am I being too nitty?
Ward 2 by the time this comes out isn't going to stop most of the removal spells.
Right. 4 mana removal spells
But I mean,
probably
it is
still
an
do.
8/8. Like a 6 mana 8/8 that if they chump, you gain 3 life. Also, if they chump with a creature that has an ETB effect, it actually still has the ETB effect.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. I'm still going to say B+. Shelob does not quite get into A range for me. It's still just ultimately a 6 mana big thing.
Yeah, I think B+ is right.
Mary, Esquire of Rohan. This is red-white for a 2/2 legendary halfling knight at rare with haste. So Mary's got haste and first strike as long as it's, equipped. Whenever you attack with Mary and another legendary creature, draw a card. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, if Mary attacks with the Ringbearer, you draw a card. Pretty decent little 2-drop.
Mary came a long way.
Yeah.
I like B for Mary Esquire of Rohan.
Yeah, it's a good card. You always
Super
play your
good
red-white
card.
decks. You're not going to go out of your way to pick it up, though.
Next is Eowyn Fearless Knight. This is 2 black-white for a 3/4 legendary human knight at rare, also with haste. And whenever Eowyn enters the battlefield, exile target creature when Eowyn enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls with greater power. Legendary creatures you control gain protection from each of that creature's colors until end of turn.
So if they have a 4/4 in play, you're like, play Eowyn, nug your thing, and then you can probably attack with everything because you have protection from like their squad. Seems pretty good to me.
Wait a minute. Is it just exiled?
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't come back. It's just done.
What? So Eowyn is a haste 3/4 that just takes out permanently a creature that has 4 or more power?
Yeah, I mean, you do have to have a target, which you're not always going to have. But
dang.
Again, if they don't have a target, you can also just play this as a 4 mana 3/4 haste, which is not crazy.
No, especially on curve. Like if you have that 1, 2, 3, 4, like this is a real slammer.
I mean, think of the swings. You're like, all right, I've stabilized behind my big Treefolk guy, and they're like, play Eowyn, kill your best creature, attack with everything. You're like, well, damn.
Yeah, and you can't block anymore, and there's
no getting the card back. It's not like it.
Right. I was looking for the text on it returns to the battlefield at the beginning of, or if she dies or something. Wow. Okay. I mean, because like, honestly, like I would pay a decent amount of mana, 2 mana for just exile target creature with power 4 or greater. Like that's just a thing that you pay 2 mana for. And this, you get a 3/4 haste attached to it for 2 extra mana. Like, yeah. Okay. Can I go with A or A- for Eowyn Fearless Knight?
You can just go A. I think that
the sick 2-for-1 potential. Next is Galadriel of Lothlorien. This is 1 green-blue for a 3/3 legendary elf noble. Galadriel's a rare. Whenever the ring tempts you, if you choose a creature other than Galadriel as your ring bearer, scry 3. So here's another one of those ones that you mentioned. Big time payoffs though. Scry 3 is a lot. And then it says, whenever you scry, you may reveal the top card of your library. If a land card is revealed this way, put it onto the battlefield tapped. When do you do that?
After the scry resolves.
Wow, nice.
So you scry 3, and then if you get spotted a land for free out of those cards.
Dang.
And if you miss completely, just put all 3 on the bottom and still hope. You get to look at the top 4 for a land, and then obviously in the late game, you're just happy getting a good value card.
Yeah, Galadriel of Lothlorien seems sweet.
Yeah, really good card.
Yeah,
I love all the scry payoffs. I think the scry deck, it's driven by the higher rarity cards like the uncommons and rares, but those cards are very good, which makes me pretty high on them. So I would give Galadriel, I think, an A-. Like, if you have this card in play, your opponent's just going to feel like they're losing value every single turn that passes.
How good is the blue-green deck at ring tempting?
It's less good at ring tempting, but Galadriel works even when you scry for other reasons.
Yeah, the second ability. But you get to scry 3 when you do the ring thing. Yeah, so that's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
But like,
so,
even if you just have a bunch of scry cards, Galadriel's just giving you free lands whenever that happens. And
totally.
I mean, you know how powerful it is to end up not needing to ever put lands on top with scry. Once you have like 7 lands in play, it just turns scries into very close to draw cards.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where did you want to give Galadriel? Did you want to go A?
I would say A-. Yeah.
A-. Really good card. Let's see. Our next card is Elrond, Master of Healing. Elrond is 2 green-blue for a 4/4 legendary elf noble at rare. Whenever you scry, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of cards looked at while scrying this way.
Here's the card that you wanted. When you scry 3, you'll get 3.
It actually counts, yeah. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. Wow. So beefs up the team and then makes it so that your opponent really can't deal with it.
Some real Leovold stuff where the first time you scry, just put a counter on Elrond, and then when they kill Elrond, you draw a card.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that looks amazing. Another great scry payoff. I mean, I don't know. I guess both Elrond and Galadriel are build-arounds technically, but like a light build-around because they're in the color pair that is this is going to happen naturally.
Right. I kind of don't count them as build-arounds because if you're blue-green, you'd have to be trying to not put a bunch of scry cards in your deck.
Okay.
Like this theme's really well supported. You know, it's kind of like if you're blue-red, it's really hard to not end up with a bunch of spells in your deck. Like this is what is going on. So this is less of a build-around than a lot of these cards. It's kind of, again, like that White Saga that searches for 2 legendary creatures. Like not really a build-around in this set. It just is. Right. It just works.
You just have to check the box. And in this case, the box is I have blue and green cards in my deck, which you will. So A for Elrond?
Yeah, I would give Elrond an A. A+ is probably pushing it, but I would give it an A.
I mean, this is definitely the card that you tap out on turn 4 and you cross your fingers, because if you get to untap, you're just going to go ham.
No, this is the card. I mean, yes, you can do that and it will probably work. This is the card that you play on turn 5 and then cast Elven Farsight and put 3 +1/+1 counters on a creature.
I like that even better.
Sorry. Put a +1 counter on each of up to X target creatures. So you cast it on turn 5, cast Elven Farsight, and put a +1/+1 counter on all of your creatures, basically.
Okay, yeah, in for that as well. All right, now these next 4 are our last gold cards, but these are some of the real heavy hitters from the book, and they're 3 or more colors as well. So the first one is Saruman of Many Colors, and these are all mythic, by the way, these next 4 cards. So this is Big Daddy Saruman, 3 white, blue, black, so 6 mana, and for that you get a legendary creature avatar wizard at mythic that's a 5/4 with ward, discard an enchantment, instant, or sorcery card. So if they want to target Saruman, they have to discard one of those types somehow. And then the text is, whenever you cast your second spell each turn, each opponent mills 2 cards. When one or more cards are milled this way, exile target enchantment, instant, or sorcery card with equal or lesser mana value than that spell from an opponent's graveyard. Copy the exiled card. You may cast a copy without paying its mana cost.
I kind of can't believe they would just think this is an acceptable text box to put in front of people.
I don't know what it does. If I knew what it does, I might join you. But
okay, so it has ward. So every time they target it with anything, if that ability it counters that thing, the spell or ability, unless your opponent discards an enchantment, instant, or sorcery. So they have to have an enchantment, instant, or sorcery in order to target this. Then, separate ability, whenever you cast your second spell, which is what the Saruman's deal in this whole set, right? Whenever you cast your second spell, your opponent mills 2 cards. Then, when one or more cards are milled this way, aka when this happens.
Okay, so that's
just a weird way of saying when this happens.
Yep.
Exile target enchantment, instant, or sorcery with an equal or lesser mana cost than that spell. So the second spell you cast.
Okay.
And then you get to copy it and cast it. It's just an embarrassing card to see print, honestly. I I mean, I know I can be a little hyperbolic about these things, or a little critical, but I just don't understand how you can look at these cards and be like, yeah, no, this is acceptable.
Yeah.
This is someone, you're someone who's played and talked about Magic for years, and you're just like, what the hell is going on here? I don't understand.
I can't tell what each of these little clauses is pointing to, you know? Okay, but so you mill them for 2, and then you look to see if you hit an enchantment, instant, or sorcery from the cards that you milled. And then you need to find one.
No.
Oh.
You look to see an enchantment, instant, or sorcery just in their graveyard for any reason.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have to be one of the cards.
It doesn't have
milled.
to be from the milled. Okay. So you hope to find one of those, and then you can choose one?
And then you can exile it and cast it for as long as its casting cost is lower than the second card you cast.
You exile one of them that is equal or lesser than the second card you cast, and then you can cast it for free. You can copy it and cast it for free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I don't have any frame of reference for how often, like, creature's not in there, land's not in there. Those are the 2 most common card types in Limited, right? Instant or sorceries are up there. Enchantments are not. Enchantment's probably the least cast card type or something, you know, of the normal stuff. So maybe every once in a while you get to copy an instant or sorcery. Maybe.
Yeah. That's
Otherwise you have a 6 mana triple colored 5/4 that's difficult to kill.
Yeah. Pretty difficult to kill. They have to have an extra real card, which is mostly going to be an instant or sorcery, in order to throw your way to do that.
They may not have it, in which case they just can't. And if they do, then they're 2 for 1 in themselves off of a spell.
Yeah.
And probably a good removal spell to kill a 5/4. Okay.
Look, this card's powerful. It just pisses me off when they make cards like this. Like, you don't need to do that. Magic has a lot of cool cards you can make, many of which are in this set. They made a lot of awesome designs.
Yeah.
This is just maybe the worst design in the set.
Yeah,
like,
it's really confusing.
Really confusing.
I don't see how people at the
this looks
pre-release
like a
are just going to
computer-generated card, a Robo Rosewater card.
Yeah, it does. It kind of does. So if we zoom out, how good is this card? Like, it's triple colored, so this is a double colored set. Like, you have to do some work to get this thing onto the battlefield.
Yeah, there is Splash. There's Shire Terrace. There's the Land Cyclers. There's kind of card drawn and slower games. But, you know, if you cast this card is good. Getting to cast your second spell and then getting to randomly play. There's a lot of random spells in their graveyard, especially when you're milling them. Like Claim the Precious, right? The 3 mana kill spell. Like, all you have to do is cast a cheap spell, then an expensive spell, and then maybe you cast a removal spell. I think Saruman's probably in the A range if you can cast it. It's obviously a little tricky to cast, but the effect it has on the game is very strong. So,
well, the effect it's having on my
A minus
strong too
for gameplay. F minus for like just templating / design.
All right, let's look at Sauron the Dark Lord. Now this better be awesome. This is 3 and Grixis, so blue, black, red, 6 mana again for a legendary avatar horror. It is mythic, as I said. It's a 7/6 with ward. Sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. Dang. The ring thing doing a lot of work there, of course, but you have to sack a legit thing on board. And then it says, whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass orcs 1. Dang. So you can tack that onto the ward as well. And then whenever an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. All right. And then whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 4 cards. Holy crap.
See, look, Sauron's awesome.
Yeah.
Really flavorful, understandable. The abilities connect. It's like you don't need to do all these things to make these cards work, you know? Like,
yeah. Dude, Sauron's dope. 6 mana, 7/6 with like super ward, and it just spits out tokens and refills your hand, tempts you up. That's an A.
Yeah, Sauron's an A.
You do have to work to cast it.
Pretty close to an A+. You have to sack a legendary creature in order to target it, or artifact, but that's really hard to do.
Right, and under almost all circumstances, they get the amass orcs just thrown in there, so it's just like,
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It seems almost impossible to kill Sauron and just like win the game. Like it's at least going to be a speed bump at the very, very least.
Really hard to kill Sauron or to win the game if Sauron's in play.
Definitely. And then ring tempting you draw 4 is awesome. At that point in the game, you're probably out of cards anyway or close to it.
Yeah.
Next is Aragorn the Uniter. So this is 4 colors. It's red, green, white, blue. So everything except for black. And it's a 5/5 legendary human noble, once again at Mythic. And it's got a lot of text too. Whenever you cast a white spell, you get a 1/1 human soldier creature token. Whenever you cast a blue spell, you scry 2. Whenever you cast a red spell, Aragorn the Uniter deals 3 damage to an opponent. And whenever you cast a green spell, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. So 4 mana 5/5, but not really, right? Because this is a straight up 4-color card. Very difficult to cast.
Yeah, so this is where the casting cost actually really penalizes it. Aragorn is an A in play, but I think is probably closer to an F than any other number, given the fact that how are you casting this card?
Yeah, I think that we would have to give it a build around in the case, but I think that if you did a study by the end of the thing and said, okay, I have an Aragorn, I'm going to build around it. You're probably, if you just had like a 4 mana 4/4 in your colors and stuck to 2 colors, you'd probably win more than trying to build around Aragorn.
It's just not the set for a 4-color thing. 3 and 4 is very different in this set, whereas in some sets it's actually not that different.
Right. This is a dope card. That is a cool card though. Like,
really cool card, but
really neat. Yeah, and again, I like the design too.
But I know they can make awesome cards. They make a lot of awesome cards.
Yeah.
That's why it baffles me when they make these Sarumans where it's like, just put this in front of someone who doesn't play tons of Magic and see what they say. Yeah. Or in the case of you, who does play tons of Magic.
And like it's my job to read cards and understand them. And I'm like, I don't know what this thing does. So yeah, I mean, realistically, Aragorn gets an F because it's not castable.
Yeah.
Speaking of not castable, this is Tom Bombadil, which is a character from the book that didn't make it into the movie, but actually had a pretty big role in the book. It's Wooburg. So 1 mana of each color for a 4/4 legendary god bard. And it says, as long as there are 4 or more lore counters among sagas you control, Tom Bombadil has hexproof and indestructible. He's a real storyteller. Whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control resolves, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a saga card. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest of them on the bottom of your library in a random order. This ability triggers only once each turn. That is really cool, and it's an F.
Yeah, it is unfortunately an F. You can't play this card.
Yeah, that is cool though. I like this saga. Saga-centric Tom Bombadil, but yeah, it's an F. That brings us to artifacts, of which there are a few, and then a few lands, and then we're done. First artifact is called Glamdring, and this is 2 mana for a legendary artifact equipment. It is mythic rare. It says equipped creature has first strike and gets +1/+0 for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. And it says whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to that damage without paying its mana cost. Is this just a sword?
What do you mean?
Like, it kind of reminds me of like the swords,
Oh, yeah. No, this is Runechanter's Pike with an additional clause.
Okay.
If you want to talk swords, well, you'll see that in a second here.
Okay, because this feels swordy. But anyway, the equip cost, as you might imagine, is quite expensive. It's 3, which is usually prohibitive.
Yeah, the main problem I have with Glamdring, Anduril I don't have any problems with, as we'll see, is you need a lot of spells and you need some creatures to wear it. And that's like that's a big ask.
That is tough.
Having those two things. So I think that it's generally not a card that I would recommend playing. Like, it's hard to balance that. Maybe if you have a bunch of amass token making and like rally at the Hornburg, make 2 1/1s, you can kind of set something up. But I think for the most part, you're not really gonna. Glamdring's like a build around D. It's just kind of hard to really use that, I think, in a way that's going to be productive.
Yeah, and then the second ability is sort of a temporary boost that sometimes doesn't even do anything. Like, if you had the mana anyway, it doesn't really help. So build around D for Glamdring. Next is Horn of the Mark. This is 2 mana for a legendary artifact. It's rare. Whenever 2 or more creatures you control attack a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order.
So if you can set up attacking with 2 creatures, you can get some pretty good value here. But I don't think you're really gonna like how this card plays out most of the time.
No, I mean, it's just really difficult to have 2 clean attacks, right? Like, it's not actually that common that you can just send in 2 creatures without, having to fear crackback or having one of them die or whatever. And you may be able to like send one in clean and one of them that trades or dies, but then you get your horn trigger.
One in clean and one in dirty.
Yeah. And then you start, chaining together. But like the first time you miss on that, it's a disaster. Also, we always have to bring this up because it is our natural tendency just to think of this in terms of what could it do for me, but what could it not do for you? And that is get you from back from anywhere near behind. If you do not have the attacks, you cannot attack with this. You basically rip up the horn. You pay 2 mana for nothing.
Yeah,
it has to go in an aggressive deck. I don't like cards like this.
Looks like a D. I just don't think you have the room to play this in the decks that you would play it in.
No, I mean, it's a win more card too, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're winning, you get to win more. Those cards are low value. Next is Sting, the Glinting Dagger. This is 2 mana for a legendary artifact equipment. At regular rare, come on, you couldn't make Sting a mythic. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. Nice. At the beginning of each combat, untap equipped creature. The beginning of each combat, so their turn 2. Okay. And then equipped creature has first strike as long as it's blocking or blocked by a goblin or orc. Nice. Equip cost 2. 1 +1/+1 haste, sometimes first strike, vigilance-ish.
Yeah, first strike-ish.
Yeah, first strike, it's vigilance-ish.
Also, haste on a creature with like an equip cost is not typically like, that impressive.
It comes up occasionally.
Yeah.
I mean, this is decent. Like, does this clear the bar for equipment that you'd actually want to put in your deck? That's the question, right? Lately, it's been like, no. Like, nothing does, almost, unless they just make it obscene, And this is not obscene, but this is a lot.
Yeah, I don't like this. I don't think you're going to play this very much.
Is there any combo that you can do with the beginning of each combat untap?
I mean, if you had a creature with a tap ability, I don't think there's very many of those, though.
I don't think so either. I would just give it D for Sting. Yeah, sad. I mean, but look, we've been on this for a while now. Like, equipment kind of sucks. Like,
well, I think it's because when equipment's too good, it can be pretty oppressive. Like,
yeah,
it's like a permanent aura. Their creatures are all, awesome, right?
And so then that forces them to make cards that are just below that power level, but then those fall short. Like, it's a very difficult permanent type to develop cards for. Next, so this is the one you mentioned, Anduril, Flame of the West. What does it do?
It's 3 to cast. It's a legendary equipment at Mythic. And it has equip 2. So it is like a sword. 3 to cast, 2 to equip. Equipped creature gets +3/+1. And whenever equipped creature attacks, make 2 1/1 tapped spirit tokens with flying.
Whoa.
If the creature was legendary, those tokens are tapped and attacking instead.
Jeez.
Look at this is absurd. It's a sword that you don't have to hit them with. If you attack, you get 2 1/1s. Also, the creatures that it makes, it can just wear.
Yes.
Like the next turn, you can put the Anduril on one of those creatures. So even if you literally have a 1/1 in play, you just attack with everything, or attack with that. They trade or kill it, and you get 2 1/1 tokens. Next turn, you equip one of those with tokens and attack, and like the game's over.
Right. You also attacked for 8 over those 2 turns, by the way.
This looks like an A to me.
Me too.
The only thing that you could say about it is it costs 5 total, and if they have a bouncer removal, you're maybe out some mana, or it makes the spirits tapped, so you're not necessarily going to, have blockers on the next turn. But
yeah.
This card seems absolutely outrageous.
But the clause of really only needing to attack once with any creature absolves it, right? Because now you're actually building out your board. And if you're in that bad a shape, there's not many cards that would have got you out of it anyway. A for Anduril. That's crazy. Horn of Gondor. Sound the horn. 3 mana for a legendary artifact at rare. When Horn of Gondor enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Oh, the horn comes with its own Gondorian. Very nice. You can pay 3 and tap it to create X 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, where X is the number of humans you control. Wow. So that first one actually matters kind of a lot.
Oh, it does. I mean,
like if they kill it, it's a lot worse.
Early front runner for one of the most hopeless feeling cards, where they play Horn and you're like, oh shoot, I can't kill that, and I'm not pressuring them. And then they're like, make a token, make 2 tokens, make 4 tokens, and then obviously the game goes crazy from there. But even more than that, playing Horn in a human's deck where you cast Horn and the first activation nets you 3 creatures.
Yeah.
So
the weak point is if you're not properly humaned up and they kill the one that came with it, then it can do nothing.
I think this is pretty close to an A in a deck with a lot of humans, which is what you should try to do. I think it's about like a B- in a deck, C plus B- in a deck without humans. Like, I don't really like it in a deck without humans, but in like any white adjacent deck, white, black, white, green, white, red, whatever, white, blue, makes the tokens, Horn is going to be like a not must kill, but must kill all my creatures threat, which is a pretty hard thing to do. And if once it gets going, it's really hard to stop. You'd have to have like a sweeper or something. Yeah,
because there's that window where if they don't have any other humans and they have to kill the token, and if they don't, I do have a timing question. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but if they activate it and I kill the token in response, do they get one?
Yeah, it doesn't count that one. Yeah,
it does count that one.
It does not. So like, if you have 6 mana, you go play Horn, activate it, have 1 creature, and you're like, all right, in response, kill it. You get 0. It checks on resolution.
Yeah, so that's a big deal.
So this is like a build around A. Is actually where I'd want to settle for Horn.
Yeah, if you have humans deck, it's just dumb. If not, though, there's some like if you literally like the question I have for you is if you had no humans, then how do you feel about Horn?
I don't think you should play it, because if they kill the 1 token, your card's just dead.
It just does nothing.
And also 3 tap, make a 1/1, then 3 tap, make 2 1/1s is pretty slow.
It is. Okay. Next is Mithril Coat. This is 3 mana for a legendary artifact equipment. This one's rare. It has flash. It has indestructible. And when Mithril Coat enters the battlefield, attach it to target legendary creature you control. Equipped creature has indestructible. The equip cost is 3. Do not like cards like this. I know you can use it to save a creature, but it's expensive to save your creature at 3 mana.
Yeah. How much would you pay for a 3 mana combat trick that just gave or rather, how much would you play a 3 mana combat trick that just gave indestructible? The answer is not much.
Never.
Like, you would not play that card.
I would play it if it costs 1.
For this to be better than that, you have to reasonably expect to equip it a couple times. Mm-hmm. So this looks like an F to me. I don't think Mithril Coat is good.
Yeah, F for Mithril Coat. Next is Palantir of Orthanc. This is 3 mana for a legendary artifact. This is a crystal ball. It's a mythic rare. It says the beginning of your end step, put an influence counter on Palantir of Orthanc and scry 2. Then target opponent may have you draw a card. If that player doesn't, you mill X cards, where X is the number of influence counters on the Palantir, and that player loses life equal to the total mana value of those cards. That's a fun little side game.
Yeah, so you get to scry 2 every turn no matter what, which is already kind of cool and also really good if you're playing the scry deck.
Yeah.
And then either they let you draw a card or they mill you, but you're probably not going to get milled out because they're getting nugged for the casting cost of all your cards.
Yeah.
So basically, what they want to do is not let you draw the first time or two, but then start letting you draw or later, because the first time, if you say, okay, just mill 1 and I lose that much life, I could mill a land or whatever, a 2 mana card. The second time, maybe you say, okay, no, you still can't draw. And then I mill, and with the scry, you're also less likely to mill lands. You're probably putting spells on top. By the time the third counter's on, if I say, no, you can't draw, you're going to take a lot of damage.
Definitely. And my incentives are mostly aligned, right? Like, I want to put spells on top.
Yeah, I mean, maybe early in the game you'll put a land on top, but
Yeah.
most of the time you're going to want to put spells on top.
Because if they have me mill them, then they take the damage, and if they don't, then I'm drawing spells. So
this is a slow card, but I think it's a good one. I think that there's some games where this will just dominate, and the way the games have played out in this format, it actually feels pretty reasonable to expect to be some amount of games like that. So yeah, I'm pretty into Palantir of Orthanc. I think it's good.
Is it like a B?
I think it's like a B.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's scry 2 every
keep,
turn adds up pretty fast.
Yeah, you're not going to cast this early against like red-white aggro, but if you play against any of the slower decks, play against green-white, play against, like blue control, they're going to look at this card and be like, ooh, this is going to be a real problem.
This is going to be an issue, yeah.
So I like B for Palantir of Orthanc.
I like it too. It's a cool card. Next is Phial of Galadriel, and this is 3 mana for a legendary artifact at rare. If you would draw a card while you have no cards in hand, draw 2 cards instead. If you would gain life while you have 5 or less life, gain twice that much life instead, and it taps to add 1 mana of any color.
I love this card. I actually think this card is awesome. It's a super cool card. Really? It's a really fun quest. The quest is get to know cards in hand. Mm-hmm. And that quest is actually a pretty attainable one. It combines really well with things like Wizard's Rockets, because that's a cantrip that sits in play. Mm-hmm. So you empty your hand, crack it, draw 2 cards. Mm-hmm. You crack a food when you're at 4, you gain 6 life. Mm-hmm. And I mean, a 3-mana rock is not so unbelievably unplayable to start with. It's usually below the bar. I think the abilities on Phial of Galadriel make this actually well above the bar.
Okay.
Imagine
if you get to 0 cards in your hand, like you're steamrolling because you're just playing.
You draw 2 cards on your draw step. You're just playing 2 cards a turn.
Right.
And it also makes any additional card draw very strong.
It does?
Yeah, it says if you draw a card or you have no cards in hand. So imagine you have a Wizard's Rockets in play, right? Because and you have no cards in hand. You crack that and you draw 2 cards.
Okay.
But
you wouldn't want to play card draw spells with this, right? Like
it's not good with card draw spells, but it's good with it's good with cheap cantrips. Like birthday present, for example, it's actually pretty good with.
Okay, but you don't want to have the type of cards that keep, the 5 mana one or the 4 mana with the discount.
It's not good with those.
Yeah.
I think Phial is good on a low curve deck. I mean, I think it's pretty sick in like a red-white aggro deck. Like,
oh, that's insane.
Yeah, you just play this on turn 4, play your 2-drop, and then like your hand's almost empty and you're just drawing 2 cards a turn. You will overpower them.
Definitely. What do you want to give Phial of Galadriel?
I think the Phial is actually really good. I would give it a B. I think it's I think it's really good. I played against it twice now, and both times it was pretty strong.
Okay, yeah, I'm in. I mean, like you said, these mana rocks don't need that much.
You're going to enjoy playing with this card.
Definitely. I love mini games like this. Last artifact is called the One Ring. You may have heard of it.
Here we are.
This is 4 mana for a legendary artifact. It is mythic. It is indestructible, or is it? When the One Ring enters a battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring, and you can tap it to put a burden counter on it, then draw a card for each burden counter on it.
So you play this and you're completely safe for a turn.
Yeah, and by the way, protection from everything means you can't be targeted, dealt damage, anything. Nothing. So you just can't die.
End of that turn, or right away, actually, you just tap it to draw a card, lose a life, you untap. Or so you tap to draw a card, you untap, you lose a life, then you tap it to draw 2 cards. Then in your next turn, you lose 2 life, and you tap it to draw 3 cards. So far, you've paid 3 life and drawn 6 cards. And then you are now on the hook to lose 2 life every single turn from there, or you're on the hook to lose 3 life every single turn from there if you don't stop using it. Mm-hmm. And if you use it, that ramps up. But there's a couple of combos with it. One, you really want to find Improvised Club, sack an artifact or creature to deal 4.
Oh, to get off the train.
Basically, the way the ring works is it kind of pays you at the beginning, where at the start of things, you like I said, you will at one point have drawn 6 cards and lost 3 life. That's a good deal.
Right.
But it does put the onus on you to finish the game very quickly, because 3 life a turn is obviously, you can't just sit there on that.
Right, that's crippling.
The other thing you can do, and then also if you keep it at 3 life, you're not drawing any more cards, right? It's funny because every step of the ring is like kind of worth drawing 4 cards, but then now you're losing 4 life, but then you might as well draw 5 cards. What are you going to turn down 5 cards?
Yeah.
Like, I think this is a sick design. I think they really did knock it out of the park with this. So
the ring actually is tempting you. I mean, it's really you want to go for it.
A+ design. I don't think it's an A+ card to draft. But what I do think is, if you can pair it with Improvised Club, if you can pair it with food tokens, like a good food generation deck, if you can pair it with a really aggressive deck, then there is some possibilities here.
Is there a natural stopping point? Is it 3 or is it 2?
I think once you've drawn 6 cards and it's at 3 burden counters, that's kind of about where 6 extra cards is probably enough to get you there.
I mean,
if
that's
you have
a ton.
to use it more.
What about if it's 3 cards, but you're only losing 2 life a turn? Is that just not enough?
I think that's probably not quite enough. Obviously, you'll have to do it game by game.
Yeah.
The cool thing about having sack outlets for this is you can just go nuts. You can just tap to draw 4, tap to draw 5, and try to find that quick, as quickly as you can.
Would you play it without them?
Yeah, if your deck can close the game well enough, or has a bunch of life gain, like if you have a bunch of food, if you have some good ways to gain lifelink. I think overall the ring is a B, but it's also a who are we kidding A. No one is going to pass the card, so it doesn't matter. Not even because of value, just because it's so cool. Who among us is going to be passing the ring?
Yeah, we are merely human who are the weakest to its power, so we are going to be taking the one ring. So let's just let our eyes get glassy and give the one ring an A+ and say it's beautiful and precious and all that. But really, it'll play probably like a B- or something, because it will kill you some percent. All right, 5 lands to go. They're kind of the iconic places on Middle Earth. The first one is Minas Tirith, which is a legendary land that taps for white mana. Minas Tirith enters a battlefield tapped unless you control a legendary creature.
All 5 of them do this, by the way.
Is that right? Does Mount Doom do it?
That's the 6th. Mount Doom is not one of the 5.
Oh, the 5 do it. Okay, so all 5 of them do this, so I won't mention it for the others, but they all have that as well. Taps add white. You can pay 1 and a white and tap it to draw a card. Activate only if you attacked with 2 or more creatures this turn. Dang.
Here, let's read the text on all of them, because I think that they all kind of play. They're going to get basically a similar
They play
rate
into their things. Okay. The blue one is Rivendell, and it's 1 and a blue, tap it, scry 2, activate only if you control a legendary creature. Barad-dûr is the black one, and you can pay XX black and tap it to amass Orcs X, where you can only activate it if a creature died this turn. The red one is Mines of Moria, which is 3 and a red, tap it, and exile 3 cards from your graveyard to create 2 treasure tokens, dig up some treasures. And then the green one is, of course, the Shire, which is 1 and a green, tap it, and tap an untapped creatures you control to create a food token.
So basically, none of these have a big game-breaking effect. The best one's probably Barad-dûr, because you can late game, if a creature dies, you can spend 5 to 7 mana and get a nice amass going.
Minas Tirith is pretty good. Draw cards if you're beating down. Yeah, okay.
The blue one lets you scry, which is kind of nice. You have to have a legend in play to scry, though. So it's all of them are fine. But what's nice about all of them is they don't cost you very much. They almost always just come into play untapped, or you play them turn 1. And they have a beneficial effect on the game. So like most lands, I would take them in the B- range, just because they're a value add. They're kind of a 24th spell in your deck, at low cost. But they're not better than premium common removal or a card that you need to make the synergies work in your deck.
Yeah, that's a good way to put that. Really nice job with those. Are those going to see constructed play?
I would not be surprised if Minas Tirith sees constructed play. Maybe Mines of Moria, actually. End of turn, make a treasure is a good way to spend some mana,
Yeah, 2 treasures. All right, and then our last card is Mount Doom, which is also a legendary land. This one's mythic, though, and you can tap it and pay a life to add black or red. You can pay 1 red, black, and tap it to have Mount Doom deal 1 damage to each opponent. So 3 mana, tap it, so 4 lands tap to do a damage. Or you can pay 5 red black, tap it, and sacrifice Mount Doom and a legendary artifact. I wonder which one you could sacrifice. And then choose up to 2 creatures, then destroy the rest and activate as a sorcery.
Yep, you cast the ring into the fire. Look, this is really
pretty
powerful.
Cool, man.
I think the best way to get this going is probably to play an artifact creature like the stupid scarecrow and then make it the ring bearer.
Oh, sure.
And then throw it into Mount Doom.
That's pretty cool.
So, there's that.
Who are the 2 creatures that survive, though?
Sam and Frodo.
It's Sam and Frodo, right?
Yeah, I think
there's
so.
no mention of Smeagol here. Who?
No. Well, he fell into the.
I know, but that should be part of the story, right? It's kind of key to the.
I mean, they do have a bit of a restriction of text. They can't, just do that.
Yeah,
but
fair
the
enough.
fact that you can't get mana out of this without paying life makes this an F for me.
Oh, really?
I mean, I don't think you can put this card in your deck. If you draw 3 lands and this is one of those 3 lands and you pay 3 or 4 life over the course of a game, that's really horrendous.
That's really tough.
And the ping ability is not enough to make up for that. So unless you really have a bunch of Mordor trebuchets and Tempted by the Ring cards, because that's an artifact, sure. At that point, maybe I'd consider Mount Doom. But for the most part, you shouldn't put this card in your deck. It will lose you more games than it'll win you.
Okay. Yeah. And it's so flavor driven, right? Just choose up to 2 creatures and sacrifice this in a legendary artifact. It's okay, I get it. Okay. Well, there you go. Really a much, much more balanced, neutral approach to the rares than what we've seen of the quote regular sets. I'm leaning into what I said at the beginning of the review here that, not as a knock, but it feels much more towards the core set end of things. The rares do, the mechanics do. It just feels like they really wanted to nail the flavor. And they used a similar template. If you remember back when they reintroduced core sets with M10, they were trying to go for what they called core fantasy flavor on those, right?
Gin of Wishes and
totally
Phylactery Lich and stuff like that. Just awesome stuff.
And it really hit. They had angels and orcs and all that stuff. And it really, really worked. And you can tell, at least in my mind, that was the tone of the design for this set. They're look, we want to nail this Lord of the Rings flavor, which, by the way, all fantasy, has some roots, right, in Lord of the Rings stuff. So a lot of these things that we take for granted in Magic that are sort of that core fantasy flavor have roots in Lord of the Rings anyway. And it feels like they did. And I'm kind of stoked for that. I was a huge core set fan. And I like Magic that's a little bit more straightforward every once in a while as a palate cleanser. And if this one can be that, but also satisfy the Lord of the Rings fans out there, I think that'll be a really solid, triple, let's call it for R&D. Let's call it there. That is it. Those are all of the rares and mythics for the set. We already did, of course, the commons and uncommons last week, so you can check those out if you'd like. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find every episode of the podcast, including that show I mentioned from last week, the Commons and Uncommons review, but every other show we've done over at lrcast.com. I also mentioned Luis's new YouTube channel. You can find a link to that right on the front page of lrcast.com as well. So if you're interested in signing up, he's already got a couple of Lord of the Rings drafts up there. So if you want to see these cards in action today, you can do that over at his YouTube channel. And with that, it's going to do it. We'll be back next week with our format overview for the set. We'll see you then.
All right, this is going to be fast since I do got to run, but I got to say, I don't understand my dog. So Julie, she's a good dog. She's a weirdo. She had this dog bed she used for a long time, but she kept digging in it. So eventually it kind of wore through. So we're we'll get her a new dog bed. This will be awesome. She'll love it. Cause the dog is she's looking at me right now, obsessed with lying on comfortable surfaces blankets and dog beds and couches. You put a blanket on the floor, she'll run over and jump on it, right? Get her this new dog bed. She sniffs it. She lies down in it. We're great. She loves it. Then she gets up, digs in it a bunch, pees on it, and then runs away. And it's just what is going on? And really what that makes me think is if I can't even understand this, I would say not above average intelligence dog. You know, I love her. She's the best dog in the world. But, you know, Julie's not like, you know, I think she's not winning any of those, you know, service dog competitions. How can we even hope to understand another person, much less ourselves? Because I just look at it, I'm just completely baffled. I just don't even understand. So I guess best of luck understanding the people in your life and or the dogs, because I sure don't.